Biff Hansen.
Here.
Matthew Phipps.
Present.
Keith Shaw.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask.
Here.
Tony Bustalka.
Here.
Thank you.
So the first order of business, the election of officers. And so for the organizational meeting, the board can nominate anybody for an officer's position. A second motion is not required. And officers are elected by majority secret ballot vote. So nominations are now open for the office of president.
I would nominate Christopher Abel.
Been nominated by Christopher Abel.
I'll
Are there
nominate,
any other nominations?
I'll nominate Carrie Trask.
I'd like to decline that. Thanks, Matt. But
Are there any other nominations? The nominations for the president are now closed. We need to vote for that balance.
We don't.
We don't need, so
Okay, thank you.
no, congratulations.
congratulations, guys. So it's now turned over to you, sir. And
Let's turn it over to you, sir.
Oh, should I do the rest of it?
Yep.
Okay, well then I will take nominations for vice president.
Nominate Carrie Trask.
We have a nomination for.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I have a nomination for Carrie Trask.
And who made the nomination?
That was made by Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Shaw.
Any other nominations? Let's go now. Nominations now calls closed. So, Mr. Trask, congratulations, you're the vice president.
With Spalding, yeah.
We got some big shoes.
Yeah, I did.
And last here, make sure I'm doing this right, are the nominations for treasurer.
I'll nominate Keith Shaw.
A nomination for Keith Shaw for treasurer. Any other nominations? Going once, going twice. We'll call the nominations closed. Mr. Shaw, congratulations. You
I don't need that. I don't even know what the treasurer does.
You're going to find out.
You don't know what the treasurer does.
Sign checks. Surprise, surprise. You switch with me, Carrie.
So do I?
You can sit there. I think we're gonna.
Do you want to do the other stuff
It's
right
up to
now
you.
before
It's-
we're done?
It's up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, we have just two more orders of business to finish before here. One is districts should annually appoint a board secretary who is a non-board member. So I'm looking for a
Who will we get? Who could we possibly get?
I wonder.
How about Lori?
Lori.
I'd like to nominate Lori. Lori Brown? This is Lori Brown.
And that was moved by Mr. Trask. Do we have a second? Second. Second. Do you have any other nominations for that? Nobody else wants that.
We should give you a big hand.
So, yes. Okay, and the deputy treasurer and deputy clerk, who I'm guessing is also you?
Usually Angela.
Oh, Angela, I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd be the deputy treasurer because you're the business
Kind of
manager,
the money,
but
the
okay.
money girl.
I thought that was higher than that. Okay, so Angela, I'm looking for a motion for Angela.
nominate Angela.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Okay. Any other nominations? Again, I doubt nobody else wants. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Although I don't think we need to do that. Very good. And now I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Oh.
From the organizational meeting.
Yeah. All right, motion to adjourn. Second. Motion from the organizational meeting. We have a second from the organizational meeting. Did you get those?
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just kidding. Okay, we'll spend a few minutes rearranging ourselves and then we'll launch right in.
Well,
regular special meeting, special.
we have to wait at 6 because it says 6 on the paper.
No.
Why don't you just draw names where we sit? Where's got the box?
It says 6 PM or immediately following.
Yeah,
the
I would-
Oh,
organizational
it says
meeting.
that. Yeah, it should be the plan.
Do you want to? Keith has suggested, I agree with him, that we should draw names for the rest of the.
Remind me to. You know, my mind is.
Just put this on here. No, you're fine. You're good. Or if you guys just want to arrange yourselves there.
All right.
Here, you want your jacket?
Yeah, sure. I do want my jacket.
Great places.
Okay. So you all like that? County board?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Isn't this
Yeah.
Trojan?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna draw it.
Oh, we're gonna,
Yep.
okay.
However you want to do it. Okay.
If you just number the spots.
Angela, there is here. So I just put the names and then the individual can select where they want to sit. And be the, do the honors.
Well, we'll be, sure, right?
Yeah.
It's up to
You
however
will,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would just do the others.
Okay.
Trying for what?
But if everybody's happy where they are, absolutely. Thank you.
However the board wants to do it.
Were you thinking everybody
I don't care, yeah.
or just the non-officers?
No, everybody.
Everybody, okay, then let's do it that way.
You.
Yeah, everybody except me. What do you want to do?
Everybody
Okay,
except you.
everybody except me is swell.
Okay.
She needs one too.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there's enough in there.
I
So I'm the
did
only-
not put your name in there.
Nobody else? Yeah, we're just.
Oh.
That's the only one.
Right.
Something new.
Your name's not in there.
So this is who gets.
I just need to know before.
Whoever, yeah, you get to pick where you want to sit.
Well, this will be fun.
Yeah.
This never worked with third graders, let me tell you. Mr. Trask, you get to choose first where you want to sit.
Okay. Let's see.
He's happy where he is. You have the name on here already. You're really slick. Mr. Spalding?
Do you want to do like
Mr.
a
Spalding?
one or two?
I was looking at the map part.
I'm good right here.
He's happy where he is. Mr. Phipps? I already said I was gonna go.
It's not gonna be a mass migration, I guess.
Mr. Shaw? Are we all good?
We are. Yeah, cool, but
We only have. Are you happy? Are you happy?
Yeah,
Because it's the only spot left.
well, that's okay, I loved it.
That's how it worked.
Here we go.
Intentionally.
Oh,
There's one
You
right
look so
But
good.
don't you already
You
said
look
yes?
so
Okay.
good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, could be, yeah.
We have one over here.
Signature page. We could do them after.
One at 20.
For our ranking, we have to update signature cards. And so I do think you guys, you can get back to me after. It doesn't have to be right now. Yeah, I'll be one to keep this one.
what are you saying?
Let's do that for these after.
No, because
You want to do them after.
Or you have, the script for the,
Yes.
You've been making that side.
There isn't any communication on the agenda for.
we'll get it on, but we'll get it on the next one.
Yep.
But we'll get it on.
Okay.
Yep. It is me, yeah.
Okay, so this is the official one.
What's that?
3 months.
I think it is, yeah, just getting in.
No, you're fine.
Still waiting to check. I'm sure.
These end up being,
What's this on the lake? Thanks for giving it back. I noticed. Like, oh, where did this go?
Chris and Carrie, if we can just meet after the rest of the signatures and stuff will be good.
Sure, we'll do that right after.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
I will, I'll do it.
Hot box on
Everybody good? You're ready.
Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Okay, it's 5:41, and I will therefore call the April 23rd special meeting of the board to order. And first, we have are you going to do the roll call again?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just checking if you want to do that.
Christopher Abel,
Here.
Biff Hansen,
Here.
Matthew Phipps,
Present.
Keith Shaw,
Here.
Matthew Spalding,
Here.
Terry Trask,
Here.
Tony Vazquez.
Here.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance, so.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, we have the consent agenda. I'm looking if there's anything anyone would like to see removed from the consent agenda.
I have a few items. Do you want them all?
Sure.
Personnel report, the contract days for the APs,
Okay.
the FCCLA, and the FBLA that were just added.
Okay.
You know, the
FCCLA and the FBLA, right?
Right.
Okay. Is that all of them?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I was gonna swear. The 8820 school day closure. School day closure.
Okay, number 6 in the policies?
Yeah.
Anything else anybody wants to remove to discuss separately? Okay, then let me see it. Yes. Just making sure.
President, use of tobacco and nicotine by students, is that in the consent agenda?
That is under the consent agenda. Would you like it pulled to discuss?
Yes.
Okay, so 5512 will pull as well. Okay, so that means the consent agenda now is comprised of A, C, E,
Wow.
H, 1 through 4,
Yeah.
7, and 8. The others we will take separately. So I would be looking for a motion to approve those items on the consent agenda that I just listed.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Thank you. A motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the rest of those will stand as passed. We now go to the report of the superintendent.
we get.
No.
we get-
Or did you want to take those up first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to take those up after your report. I apologize. Okay, so then let's go straight to B, the personnel report. I'll always defer to the person who requested, if I can remember who it is.
Sure.
To speak to it first.
Yeah, it looked like we filled all the admin vacancies. Did I read that right?
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a great job to you and your team. So, way to go.
Thank you, Tony. When you say team, I just want to speak to that just a minute. It takes a team. And we've got a lot of good people that work very hard, but we were able to bring, I think, 3 quality people into this district. So we're very fortunate. We're looking forward to the future with these 3 on our team. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Anyone else? Mike, if I could ask you a question? I just want to understand we're filling positions that have been held open this entire year, and we're hiring people for next year.
You're talking about the administrator position?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, well, my question is, what is our certainty of the essentialness of these positions if we've just gone an entire year without some of them? I mean, if they're being filled in by subs, that's entirely different than if they've just been sitting empty.
Yeah, let me speak to that if I may. So obviously we're at Washington. We were filled in with retirees. The one that's sitting here right at the board. The old folks, Andy Jones, Pete Schultz, Bill Birchie, those people filled in. So that's how we basically worked to get by this year. Relative to Monroe, we had the person left us about Thanksgiving. Bill Birchie went in there for a number of days after that. We had Chris Callan as a basically part-time dean in there. Bill could cover 100% of the time, so that's how we did that. Relative to the associate principal at Lincoln, we hired a part-time retiree to oversee all of the assessments and testing and stuff like that, so we could take that off of Laney and Ben's plate in order to make that work for this past year.
And that's a large portion of that job?
It's a fairly large portion of that job. And obviously, you know, we didn't get by without that one administrative position at Lincoln. But like I said, we hired that retiree. However, just because you don't have somebody in the position doesn't mean you don't need somebody in the position.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm asking.
Yeah, I know.
Sometimes you discover being missing a person, there are ways to work around it. And sometimes you find out you really need that.
Yeah, correct.
Knowing that it's deeply involved with the testing, that really helps me since I'm well aware of how that
I
situation.
just want to say that, not only did you fill them, they look like, red hot people. I mean, I was pretty impressed with the piece you he wrote up about each one of them. So, I'm excited we got people of that quality.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
We had a really nice candidate pool for all 3 of them, especially for the AP position at Lincoln. So we felt as though we were attracting some very quality people, and then to land the 3 that we landed, we really feel good about.
And I would be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Sorry about putting the discussion in front of that. Totally my fault. I'll do better on C. Okay. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Then the next thing was D, proposed contract days increase for Lincoln High School associate principals. Again,
Yes. I was just curious, and I didn't know if this would change anything or not, but, I know we just hired that 3rd AP, and I didn't know if that would change that at all.
Change the recommendation.
Correct.
I wasn't planning on changing the recommendation. We'd prefer to have all 3 of them at 240 days a year. Is that what you're asking, Tony?
Yeah, correct.
Right, correct. And, you'll see from the supporting document that a number of the 12-month positions. However, in speaking to our current APs up there and the principal, they truly believe that 240 days would be the ideal contract to be able to get everything done in a timely manner and in a quality manner. So if they thought the 240, it was like, you go with the 240, and it fits well. So Sheboygan has the 240, 11-month. So I think this is the right thing to do. I mean, as you can see, from those school districts that we got the information from, I mean, we're currently at 210 days. That's substantially lower than all these other districts. I mean, 210 days versus 240 or 260. I mean, Lincoln High School is a pretty good sized high school, so, you know.
So this new guy that we just approved, is he gonna be on 242 then, or is that what he was hired at, or is that gonna add on to this?
No, that will not add on to this.
Okay. Jim, Jamie, anyone else have any thoughts on that? Is that,
You know, in terms of, as you see the comparables with everybody else, you know, it's quite a demand. You know, I think fully support the recommendation as it's been.
Do you want to make a motion?
good?
Okay, so before we have any further discussion, I'd like at least a motion and a second for consideration.
So
We have a motion,
I'll say.
we have a second. Any other discussion?
I just
Okay.
want to highlight the projected associated cost is $25,000. Just want to,
We knew that.
they don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Passed. Okay, next, it's the letter E, the out-of-state travel request that we had last time and it tabled. Oh, that's not one that we called out, sorry. I have to remember it's the circled ones we're doing. Okay, next it's the out-of-state travel request for FCCLA. And again, I believe that was you, so I'll let you speak to it before I look for a motion.
Yeah, I was just, it came on a little bit late, and I saw the dollar amount associated with it, and I was just wondering if that was budgeted for, or was that, it looked like it was a mix of school funds and then some that was gonna be raised.
Yes, some of it is, I think, trip is, we have money budgeted for the supervision stipends that come along with out-of-state travel. So that's a portion of the request. And then they have other current year funds set aside to cover the cost.
Okay, so we've already factored that in?
Yes, correct. For both proposals.
That's all I had.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve this request?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? So was the second?
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion, a second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Opposed? Hearing none? Okay, next it's the out-of-state travel request for the FBLA.
I had the same question, but she answered it already, so
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll say it.
Second, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Hearing none? That'll be approved. Next, we have policy 5512, use of tobacco and nicotine. Mr. Shaw.
after reading this policy, it addresses all of the significant things that are being used in the community. But one thing that it does not address is Delta 8, Delta 9 gummies. And I didn't know if you wanted to put that in there because that is quite popular in today's society, the use of gummies. It's not addressed in this policy. It could be brought up against this if somebody's trying to go for an expulsion and they're not using the gummies. It's referred to with the THC, but Delta 8, Delta 9 is legal at the age of 21. It's a THC formula gummy. It's also quite popular with the youth that are getting it and using it, but it's not addressed in that policy. You address the smoking, you address the vapors, the vape and that stuff. It's implied, but I don't know that that is specifically stated in the policy.
Yep, it is. It's in, under the paragraph, the term smoking means. Under several sentences in, it says, this specifically includes marijuana and hemp plant derived substances, whether or not legally sold in Wisconsin, including CBD products, Delta 8, THC, Delta 9 THC, or any other variation thereof.
Okay, so as long as that's implied there,
Yeah.
I read it and thought specifically of the smoking devices with the vapes, but I didn't know if
Yeah,
it
any
included.
derived.
Okay,
So that covers it.
okay. I make a motion to approve that.
Do we have a motion? Do we?
I'm just curious, like, how would you even know if it's common, right? I mean,
Or so.
Watch the kids.
They can test it.
Test
They
the
can
stuff.
test it.
So if we get, and actually we had a circumstance last year, if you remember, there was some edibles at one of our buildings, and then we have to rely on those SRO tests to get that done. But yeah, it's very difficult to tell between like some gummy candy and things, but.
And they look like candy. The gummies look like gummies, candy.
Make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kind of a sad thing, but all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. And now it's policy 8820, school day closure.
Yeah, I just thought maybe we should reconsider this after I did some research. We changed that policy so the board would be voting on a situation that may come up where we're out of school more than a day. And
3 days.
yeah, 3 days. But what we're saying is, I guess I'm putting my faith in the superintendent of schools and the staff we have to make that decision rather than the board getting enough information to say we're out of school for 3 days. I just don't understand why we would get involved in that when really the person who leads the district is going to have that information and make that decision. I could not find a district that would have the board vote on being out of school as I went through and tried to find one. So I'm just not sure why we did it, but I think we have to put our trust in the people leading the district to make that decision if we're out of school. They're going to have the information that comes from whoever is telling us, law enforcement, whoever, there's something maybe going on. And I think those are the people that we have to trust rather than 7 of us making that decision.
So you want to remove the 3 days?
I just want to go back to the policy, and it's the policy that the superintendent would have that discretion on keeping us out of school. If we disagree, we can always go back and let him know or her know.
from my perspective, I hear what you're saying, Biff, but, you know, I just think back to COVID and everything that transpired after that. And you know, there were a lot of people, myself included, that weren't too happy about decisions of the board at that time. So I think it's a reasonable safeguard, and I don't think it's anything too out of the ordinary to request. If we're going to go, if something like that should happen again, that the board should be the one that makes the call.
How often are we ever closed for 3 days though? Very often. It's probably is just a little safeguard. But, yeah.
Okay, last,
I just to respond, Tony, you're correct. However, we have to go with the information provided by whoever to the superintendent. You may interpret your information on the COVID situation differently than I do. So if we were going to be voting politically on something like that, I would rather have that decision made by somebody leading the district who's getting information from a source, hopefully a good source, hopefully a source based on science. But to say we're going to decide in that COVID situation that we know more than maybe somebody else based on a public feeling or a political feeling or what we feel is right, I guess I'm saying I would rather put that faith in somebody making a decision based on information they get from sources that are not us. I don't want it to be a political, we don't want to do COVID, we're not going to do it. We don't want to do this, we're not going to do it. I want it based on some kind of science, and that's what I think is best for the district.
I just want to refer to the accountability of the board members to the community. So the community has a voice. In the end of the day, if they're not happy with their yes or no vote, they can be held accountable. The superintendent's not held accountable to the district community members because he's not elected by the community. So the school board is. So that's why I would actually like this policy to stay the way we wrote it, because the accountability factor, the community actually gets some response for the decision, and then the people on the board are held accountable for their vote, yes or no. And you can have that discussion openly about it, instead of hiding behind closed doors. It's true. So that's my opinion.
It is not my goal to stifle discussion, but does anybody have a motion regarding what's before us?
I would move,
What was passed last time? I don't, catch me up with what was the decision? This is the second reading. What was the dialogue at the first reading?
The highlighted part, sorry.
Yeah, I get that. That was, but the vote was to do what at the first meeting?
The first meeting, the policy was amended so that if it was, I think it was in excess of 3 days,
Right.
then the board would vote for school closure.
So that was,
Superintendent is fully empowered to close for any amount of time under that.
We added that word, the words, any non-weather related events more than 3 consecutive days will require board approval.
this board added that.
Yes.
Well, the old board.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Neola.
yeah, Neola. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
my motion would be go back to the original wording. Strike what we added and go back to the original.
Okay, so we have a motion to strike additional wording and go back to it as originally presented last time. We have a second on that.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any,
What would the wording be, just to remove that clause?
That the superintendent would decide on the closure of the schools rather than the board voting on it if it's more than 3 days.
Oh.
I mean, other than what would cause more than 3 days? A weather
Well, I mean,
event,
it could be a flood, you know.
flooding, a weather event,
could be.
some other tragedy that
Yeah.
happened within the district. I mean, those kind of things, the super hopefully would be in tune with, and
This is non-weather related.
Oh, yeah, none.
This is
Yeah.
non-weather related events of more than 3 consecutive days.
you take the snowstorm or the flooding out of it. Police
Yeah.
situation, something else going on in the community.
Sure.
You know,
Yes.
I would just, again, reiterate, I feel the board's accountable to make those decisions, and we should be the ones making it if we're gonna close schools beyond 3 days. And the science, you could argue, was wrong, during COVID, and it cost our district quite a bit. You know, when you look at some of the kids and how far behind we are in some areas, it didn't help. So I feel things could have been a lot different had we acted sooner.
agreed, we are still accountable every election cycle. We're accountable to the voters. If we make a bad decision, they will get rid of us.
Without a vote, is what you're proposing. That's all I'm saying. I think the community understands my perspective.
Anybody else?
Okay. Call the
the-
question.
What?
Call the question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right where I said it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing that. So we're going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion, which is to return to the wording prior to the amendment at our last meeting. And to be clear, so everybody understands, should that pass, then this does come back to our next meeting because it has to hold over a meeting unamended.
Yeah.
Every time you amend it, it must go on to the next meeting. Okay? So, all those in favor of it as amended, or in favor of it removing the amendment to come back at the next meeting, signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so
Three.
4-3, that fails. Do we have any other motions?
I make the motion to accept the policy as written today.
We have a motion to accept it as presented.
One second.
We have a second.
Okay, just 1 second.
Yeah, Liz.
I'm trying to get this, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I just need to know who,
I made the motion to accept the policy.
I
as
need to
written.
go, I know, but I need to go back because I didn't get everybody's votes. So it was 3-4, it failed. Who
Yeah.
were the nays?
Tony.
I was-
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, right. It is the right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Now I'm making a motion to accept the policy as written. And Matthew Small seconded.
sorry, sometimes it's just hard. to
That's
go a little
okay.
Too fast, so I'll
Better,
make sure I get it.
better to get it
correctly.
right.
And Matthew, second?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm going to guess at very little discussion at this point.
Call question.
So, and press call the question. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. Aye. You got that? Okay. So that passes 5-2. And that exhausts me and the consent agenda. So we'll now turn it over to the superintendent for his report.
So the first couple items, we had 3 goals, and this is for a new board member in terms of that the board had established as district goals for the superintendent and to carry out with the district. And so I just carried over what I reported at the last meeting, just for the record for Mr. Shaw. And again, we, in the goal 1 with SFA implementation, we had the 3rd straight quarter of significant improvements in reading, and that's what we reported out. On the next one, we had a staff survey, which was not favorable. And we decided to monitor that and to take another survey in between. We did some listening sessions where we went out to schools and got feedback from staff, which was very beneficial. And we used that to implement some changes in terms of how we conduct our business to try to better connect with our faculty and staff. The survey results was also requested and distributed publicly. We were going to, again, keep monitoring this, but really what we're doing now is we're going to proceed with what we had previously conveyed, in terms of strategies to improve. We'll continue to monitor this along, and then we will reissue, go back to our annual survey, which will be approximately in the winter time next year. So just updating the board in terms of, we reported this out previously, and just there for Mr. Shaw. And the third item, is we had a presentation on the facilities assessment. We are still missing 2 schools. That report is now final, and we have CISA 10 back, to review that. We have hard copies. Have they been distributed?
I'm gonna help with that.
Okay, so we have hard copies of the report. We'll also send you an electronic copy of that too, so if you wanted to refer to it electronically. So with this, the presentation is essentially, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We've set, up to an hour, depending on what your questions might be in terms of engaging our CISA 10, who is now our owner reps here to facilitate some of our
Well, it's Chris's.
maintenance work.
I got the autograph copy.
Oh, gee.
Pretty excited.
So with that, we will invite our CISA 10 people up. Mike, why don't you come up also? Yeah, Mike, come on up.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So we have a new board member, so we might do some introductions again. John, you want to go through that?
I'm Nate Carell. This is our project manager with CISA 10. This is John Burgett. We have Tony Menard and Mike. Yeah, we're gonna start a presentation.
And this presentation was in your board packet too.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Well, as promised, we've got a lengthy assessment report for everyone to cruise through. It's designed exactly the way we talked at the prior two meetings. The two schools that were added since we last met were Washington Middle School and Lincoln High School. We realize that there's a lot of material there. We went through the system of ranking and prioritization in the past, but I'll just quickly go through that again. When you get to the back of each of the sections, and then also at the back of the book, there's a summary. And we're prioritizing items that we've identified, for the most part, deficiencies that we think need to be corrected in our recommendations into tables that show 1 to 2, 2 to 5, and 5 to 10 year maintenance plans. We've immediately addressed some of the concerns. Again, Mike and his department have already started doing corrections in some of the areas that we had identified deficiencies, which is really good to see. The other action item that we took is we started an owner's rep contract with the district. And in that contract, we're starting to prepare for summer projects for this year. And then that'll also carry over into the next year. Again, we're a little late at starting, but we've already taken action on some of those items. As an example, currently we've got a lighting, all building lighting bid out for Jefferson, and we've met with the principal and the lead custodian there to try to get some things done this summer and hopefully not lose time. Looking at safety, school safety, there's a lot of items that we've identified in the area of school safety. Again, breaking down the true maintenance package, there's a lot of components. So looking at it from an urgency standpoint, we know that there's some regulatory and then also some board policy requirements that need to be met. And we've identified some of those recommendations. And again, we're working to do those as a priority measure. A lot of those are relatively inexpensive and just things that we need to react to. In addition to that, we're stressing additional preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance with an urgency, and behind that would be minor and then major projects. The reason I drug you through that whole statement is to understand or try to explain that the way we're looking at the district is not just build new projects. We're also looking at the things that can be done internally with current operations and take care of some of those efficiencies as smaller projects and just things that we can move forward at a quicker pace. The other items is major construction, and again, one of the main things that we've identified is to do true master planning of what facilities you have, what the life expectancy of those facilities would be, and then what we need to consider for major improvements, either with renovations or new construction. Looking at that, kind of in the same format that we did in the past, we've got some of the measures that we've identified for Washington. A lot of these are common measures identified in multiple other buildings. Taking a look at this list, we're really recommending that we try to push through some of these items, if not this year, as early as next year. And then those items that would again carry over through an ongoing process of measuring these projects, we would continue to move through the longer list of items. Get to the next one. pictures. As you go through your book, you're going to see at the bottom of each page, when you get into the listing of the various facility improvement measures, pictures that really try to depict some of those measures as they're identified. So when I look at this set that we put in the presentation, the first one that you see in the upper left corner, that's the under pool deck at Washington for the pool, the swimming pool. And again, just from an observation standpoint, I think you'll note that we need to take some action. Again, the good response that we've had as we were going through the audit, we've already had a structural engineer come in and write a report for not only the Washington pool, but also the Wilson pool and also the Washington gym area. So with that, we hope to identify some corrective actions we can take in relatively short order. Some of the other pictures that are there, we've got the H dust collector for the tech ed department. We've got some abandoned equipment from a controls upgrade that was done over the last few years. We've got a lot of what I would call exterior aesthetic type improvements and replacements like exterior doors. We did find that the tech ed areas and several other areas in the buildings were relatively crowded. You'll see a pretty common improvement measure of reducing clutter and trying to get through and clean out some of the areas that are more accessible. One of the unique pictures, again, this is on the lower row and it's second in from the left. That cap is actually the ceiling of an abandoned coal room at Washington. We showed something similar to this at Wilson and the leaking and then the concern of parking vehicles above structures like this. The electrical boxes, again, these are well beyond expected useful life electrical shutoffs that, again, should be addressed and put into a plan for upgrades and or replacement. And then, again, somewhat of an aesthetic, but then also structural concern, painted wood fascia around the top of part of the newer edition of the Washington School, just for a taste of some of the measures that we've identified in the report. Looking at our breakdown and those listings, again, going into those same periods of time for a cost, we've identified, over $11 million in the 1 to 2 year cost, 16 million plus for the 2 to 5, and about $400,000 in the 5 to 10 year for Washington. Lincoln, again, we've got another list of common areas we had in the 1 to 2 year planning or sense of urgency. Nothing specific jumps out. It's a long list, just like in the report, but some area needs that we think should be taken care of sooner than later. And again, it should help with either compliance or offsetting continued deterioration or other costly items that may come up. The set of pictures that are here at Lincoln, and again, this is just a small sampling of pictures for these buildings. They're big and there's a lot there. Looking at wall penetrations in the building, open ceilings, the small cafeteria size for this building, the tower conditions, which I know the group here has discussed different times, clutter in the tech ed area, a couple pictures there, the walls and the below grade pool areas. Again, I mentioned we've had a structural engineer in and we've got a report looking at the pools. So hopefully we can move on a few actions there. And then roofs and flashing, which tend to add to some of the leaking and water infiltration problems that we've seen at that building. Summarizing those costs, 13 million for the 1 to 2, 28 plus million for 2 to 5, and about 4 million for 5 to 10 year projects. One of the correlations that seemed to pop up as we had done the study, we looked at energy benchmarking and comparing your like buildings, elementaries to other elementaries in the state, middle schools to middle schools, and high schools to high schools. The conditions and the scoring of conditions that we did for the elementaries lined up almost directly with the consumption of gas. What that's telling us, and kind of a check and balance for us, was to look at what conditions did we have on the building envelope for those buildings, and it was low scores. And again, we're quite sure that making some of these improvements are going to improve your utility consumption by quite a bit in those buildings. Looking at the elementary projects and the cost kind of on a comparative table, one of the things that we have to note at the bottom is the asterisks. We do have, for all of these buildings except Stangl, what we call an operational improvement, where we're recommending an addition to make the operations within the building a little bit more efficient. So it does create the look of a direct one-to-one comparison with other costs. It does look a little bit more expensive, but we've noted that. And we do have that accounted for as we work with the advisory committee. Looking at the high school and middle school, again, we've got a similar situation where we've identified about $5 million in operational improvements for Washington, essentially renovation or addition. The same at Wilson, and then $26 million at the high school. So they do impact that total dollar value that you see on those tables. And it's pretty substantial, and we did want to make a note of that as you're looking through this. We've got to ask, and again, we did like a preliminary review of this information with administration last week, and we got asked about the maintenance. What's the maintenance cost for these buildings and what their asset values are? And it's a little bit difficult to answer that in just one quick question or one quick answer. And looking at these costs, we've really identified deferred maintenance, safety, a lot of low-cost compliance items, which I had mentioned earlier, preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, minor and major projects. And it's important to note that because taking account of the asset value, quite often a board is going to say, well, what's my cost for maintenance? Typically, that cost is about 2% of what that total asset value is. But that 2% is really just maintaining that structure. It has nothing to do with things outside of just routine maintenance, additions, operational changes, or adding to your actual footprint or square footage. So it's important to note that when you look at these numbers, because they're quite large. Timeline, I think I can turn that over to you, right?
Yeah. Matt, I just wanted to know, because this was getting to one of your questions from last meeting, and we did break out so you could get a good idea of what the totals at each school meant without, for instance, cafeteria additions, or there's a number of, I guess, call them high priority important projects that went.
I want to kind of break in here a little bit.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that there's been some maintenance issues for quite some time now. A lot of these photos, I just kind of looking at them, a lot of this could have been prevented if it had a maintenance schedule. So now you're saying that you've broke them up into different priorities. Is that what you're going to kind of get to now? Or you were just saying that?
Yeah. Yeah, let me explain that. When we identified those 1 to 2 year projects.
There's a lot of easy wins here, obviously, but
Exactly.
Big picture, depending on what we're doing.
Exactly.
But it just seems like a neglect of simple things. Like, if you have lippage, fix it, or flashings, fix them, just
Right.
neglectful is what it looks
And that's
like.
exactly what we're trying to suggest is, even though we might have a critical, big problem, we may not be able to solve that in a year or two because we need to bring in a structural engineer. We need to design what the impact might be to whatever else is happening, those kinds of other variables.
But like tuck pointing, like before the problem gets even worse, easy tuck pointing could have been done 3 years ago, and now it's getting worse from freeze thaw cycles, It's so like what I'm saying is you probably did this already, but you probably prioritize them into like things that you can potentially have, Mike delegate correctly, and then bigger picture items or big ticket things that obviously, aren't in the realm at the moment, but maybe in the future. That's probably what you're getting at.
That's exactly it. So tuck pointing, if I use that as an example, we really want to get out there and caulk everything that we can caulk, because it's very inexpensive and we can move very quickly through different areas.
I mean, we do have our own staff to do that. It's just, I don't think the direction, obviously we shouldn't talk to the past, but I mean, the direction obviously is null and void now if we see the results.
Yes. So as we put these scheduled together, that was really a reference for us looking at projects, but more importantly for Mike to look at projects. And we've been going through that project list, and Mike has been taking measures for his staff to take care of. And then we've been taking measures that we thought we could act on quickly. So.
Thank you for doing that, first of all, because you'll get compensated indirectly, but thank you, because that's not a part of the purview, actually, because of the operational agreement. It's with bigger projects, but thank you is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we have to get that out of the way.
I know, well, they're easy wins as well.
Right, they are. So I didn't want anybody to think, well, why are they caulking when they have a corner of a building that looks like it might fall in? The reason is we need a year and a half to plan for how we're going to correct that corner.
I guess my next question is the severity, like, obviously, salt intrusion on steel doors, do you kind of rank them to, obviously, there's critical ones, and then there's.
And again, I can tell you what's already happened. Some of the schools or some of the sites, there's plans to do inventory of some of those doors behind what we had already identified. And then through that inventory, we hope to be able to find, some way of packaging economically replacements. Because again, if we've got 10 doors at one site that should be taken care of, it would be more efficient to do all 10. But on top of that, if we've got 5 more at another adjacent site, it might be more efficient to do all 15. And we're putting that in front of Mike, and a lot of those items are carried in such a way.
Might be good to point out that each school is ranked bad to worst per each bin. So we try to, and we do try to put more importance on low hanging fruit quicker.
But you are synthesizing for Mike. I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you for doing that, obviously.
That's it. Back to you.
Sure, sounds good. So John just talked about a lot of different things, and you obviously can see there's some very high dollar total cost problems and projects in the planning stages, I guess. That amount of money, it speaks to starting to do facility master planning and how you address that long term. We've laid out a timeline, and if the board chooses to go this route, how that may look in the next couple of years. So as we were just talking, step 1, we've started and we're doing the plan and perform assessments identified in the facility assessment, PIMs identified in the assessment. That's begun. We have a project. We're doing walkthroughs on this Friday, a whole building lighting project at Jefferson. And further other projects are in the works. Mike's got a handful of projects he just reviewed with us now that are taking off this list. We're continuing to do that, and that's going to be important. Depending on how this whole timeline goes, it may not end up looking anything like this. What we're doing now needs to keep happening because, as you can see in some of these, the pictures are just a fraction of the thousands of pictures that are worse than that. Many of the facilities are literally crumbling, and we need to do things. So continuing on the timeline, the first step in this process, and Angela's been helping us with this, is to do a financial inquiry and to try to determine what the tax impact on the community would be for different levels of projects and different, to try to put some scope into what this next step is, which is to form an internal facilities advisory committee. We've done that. We've had our first meeting last Thursday, just a few days ago, kind of outlined. I'll go in my next slide, I'll go into what the tasks of that would be. But at this point, it's important to try to identify the scope, bring it down, give this information out to the departments to have them discuss their more urgent needs, more educationally, functionally. I'll go into that in a minute. As we're meeting in the next couple of months, it's soon time to bring on an architect, and we need to do that with the board's help, with the facility planning committee's help, but it's a very important decision. Architects don't all have the same agenda in mind, and it just needs to be a good relationship. So we're planning that process now, but we need to go out with our RFP for an architect soon and get working on some of these things. A point I'd like to leave with this timeline, we're in a public meeting, I understand that, but it's important that we get our ducks in a row as much as we can with these internal facilities planning committees before we start broadcasting communication about things we don't truly know. We know our facilities are in rough shape. How the end game looks is what we don't know, and we're trying to put those pieces together right now. So within the facilities planning team, I won't go through this in detail, but we're trying to identify the safety concerns, the highest priority concerns. We're starting to do that. I'll talk about the visionary sessions in a second on the next slide, but we'll need to task each department with going into some bigger picture things. And again, that financial piece will help refine that scope. We may not need to have a broad paintbrush if we learn that we're not going to be doing something that grand. The facilities planning team will definitely help with architect selection. We're currently allocating the maintenance projects where the architect will come into play is in these renovation and construction projects and how that concept might work. And then we'll create facility options based on costs and estimated tax impact. Discuss this with the board, see where we want to go. So these are examples of visionary sessions, if you'll let me use that word, but things that we would want departments taking back and trying to determine a big picture idea. We'll need board input on some of these items too, but an example is tech ed, and where do we want to be? First of all, we have immediate needs in tech ed that we have to do now, but where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be in 10 years? This is a community where I think tech ed can thrive and prosper. I know you guys have talked about the McKinley programming and McKinley. I keep saying that because somebody wrote it. The McKinley programming at Stengel, and those conversations need to continue. But these are all examples of big picture things that we need to discuss internally. Do we want to be swimming at the elementary level? Do we want to be swimming at the middle school level? Do we want to air condition our facilities, et cetera, et cetera? Do we want to provide more care before school, after school, daycare, et cetera? What do we want to do with all our auditoriums? Big picture stuff. Questions? So I probably rushed through that a bit, but I would hope and expect that you guys have questions. We put a lot into this, and we're happy to be wrapping it up. But yes.
So high level, the next 2 years, we got $47 million worth of stuff we got to do. In the next 10 years, we got $163 million worth of stuff we got to do, depending on how we approach it. And that doesn't factor in possibly any other changes with new buildings or anything like that. Did I capture everything?
New buildings would be more.
Right.
Right.
And again, what we're hoping to do is to take that account and figure out what we can knock off of it from a priority standpoint. And then we'll continue to spread that based on whatever revenues are available to fund those improvements. The concerning piece is as everything ages, that number goes up. So, the quicker we can get on it and knock, like you say, the easy things and get some of this stuff going, essentially stop some of the depreciation and try to bite into a little bit of the deferred, we still have a big load of expense to bring the buildings all the way back to where we think they should be. So, again, that's not a fun message to state, but that's really what we feel. We hope to show you what those items are, in this report. So, yeah.
After those big picture kind of conversations,
Obviously, I like how you worded your architecture agenda statement. Do you have recommendations, obviously, to go either way, depending on what the will of the board is, depending on, renovation or new? Obviously, that could be a different decision with your architecture, partnership, recommendation.
Yeah.
So you understand what I'm
I
saying?
do. Yep, and that would be the goal. Step ahead, we'll delicately.
Yeah, because we don't want to go get too big too quick and then
Yeah.
become something that,
So in your experience, when do you bring in the public to get opinions from them on projects that you're planning or we're planning to change?
Yes, sir, and I skipped past that comment on my timeline. So in this goal, in this time frame that we set out, we would be doing that about 1 year from today. So throughout the next year, if we get an architect on board the next couple months, start with some concepts, refine that into some options. We would start our true community outreach in April. At that time, we would want to change that, what we're calling an internal facilities planning committee, to someone with a community member, a board member, whoever you'd want. Try to spread that word and gain traction.
So who makes up the planning committee right now?
It currently is the gentleman that you see here, my executive team, which includes, now the directors, Angela, Lisa Sink, who is, communications marketing. That essentially is, I don't think I missed anybody.
And Katie.
Mike, obviously.
Mike, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand exactly what you're trying to tell us.
Sure.
Big picture number is about $161.5 million if you did everything that's in here over the next 10 years. Your 1 to 2 year group, your 3 to 5 year, and your 5 to 10, right?
And it includes just a few major projects that we would call additions.
Yeah. And wow, you might go, wow, that's $16 million a year. It would be if you were breaking it up over 10 years. But the urgent stuff, which you put in the 1 and 2 year category, is close to 50 million right off the top. I think it's 47 something. So I just want the board to be aware, while we can break this down over a 10-year process, the stuff that you don't address that's in urgent need of being addressing will just continue to get more expensive the further we kick that can down the road. And we're really talking close to $50 million the first 2 years. I'm just wondering what you guys see as those first 2 years. To me, those 2 years start now with this report. When you say 1 to 2 years, are you saying 1 to 2 years at the end of this process?
No.
Or you're saying 1 to 2 years now?
That's what we were, now.
Okay,
That's
all right.
what we were trying to explain with the projects that we've begun. I mean, there's seriously situations that I feel are dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
We really said yesterday, and that's why we came to the board early, and we got involved in starting to look for the structural engineer and some of the items that have already been corrected, so. But the other thing I wanted to mention, again, it just makes it worse. As your buildings age, that depreciation load or that additional maintenance need continues to grow. So when you go out 10 years, that item that didn't get done today is 10 years older, so.
Yeah.
And more expensive.
More expensive, yeah.
Yeah. Not only more ruined, but more expensive.
How much can we do in the budget, knowing that we have about $47 million worth of stuff we want to do in 2 years?
Well,
If we were just to dink and dunk it, right?
we'd have some short-term options, and then we're gonna have to look at some long-term things as well. So, on the short, we can do some short-term borrowing. in order to get a larger amount of money. So when we were kind of evaluating this in the last, 2-3 months, we thought maybe just that 1.5 to $2 million. But then when we're looking at the sort of critical mass of what needs to be done in the short term, we will likely need to look at doing a larger short-term borrow in order to get going with a larger number of the projects. Currently we're debt-free as a district, and, we have to look at options that would add probably $1 million, $2 million every year to the budget in order to, do a borrowing. The borrowing you can do for about 20 years, and then, the amount that you can get depends on that, or you can spread it out during over different terms and for different amounts, so.
So how much could we get if we were to borrow it? Did I hear like $1 million or $2 million a year?
Well, you have to think about your payments, so that's where a Fund 38 borrowing would be something that would just be board approved and wouldn't have to go to the voters. If you go to referendum, that would be Fund 39 borrowing. We could get close to 20 million, 15 to 20 million, and then we would have a $1 to $2 million payment, if I'm recalling correctly.
Sure, okay.
So, and that would help get going on a larger amount of what we need to do. So we're definitely gonna have to
Interest is pretty low now, still.
prioritize it away.
Oh, Chris, I have a question.
No, I was just saying, this would be a good time to borrow, since we have no debt and interest rates are low for now. Yeah.
What's the annual budget now since the referendum, the operational, is it about 1 million?
Well, we under levied 3 million this year, so we plan to under levy less and take in about 1.5 additional next year, which would have, close to no impact compared to what we had this year. But we would have to look at options for, we'd be able to fit a debt payment in there. It would bring our tax
I'm
payment.
not saying the debt
Oh, I'm
payment,
sorry.
I'm saying, since last referendum that was passed, what is the budget for, because I know it went up, obviously, and increased, I think it was about $500,000 now a year.
For buildings and grounds,
Yes.
yes, $500,000 more was in there. The whole buildings and grounds budget is around $1.2 million. And based on, I was just looking quickly, when they were talking about 2% of your, look at our insured value, that's what you were mentioning, the insured value is $275 million. So you're looking at $5.5 million annually. We really should be budgeting and working towards, building into a consistent budget annually to keep building. So to marry the grand sum of needs and get us to a spot where we are truly maintaining every year, we've got a long road ahead.
Yeah. We have savings now.
Well,
Some. Don't we?
we have some money in Fund 46 for some projects set aside.
Okay.
Often people will say, well, you have fund balance, you can use fund balance, but that's not something you really want to do. You have certain amount because we're self-insured, that's 5 million off the top that you take off, then you have to protect yourself through high and low points of cash through the year.
Yeah,
So,
that's true, yeah.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, you highlighted up the formulation of an internal fiscal committee to get out there and really is this urgent 47 million that you're talking about? Would this committee have to be formed in your estimation to do that, or is this has got to get done, then we form this committee to look at the financial obligations of the community?
We feel you need the committee now, and to be able to mobilize on that $47 million, we need the support of the district and that internal group. We don't want to spend dollars in areas that don't synergize with the operations.
Gotcha.
And to be able to do that, you need more than a facilities guy. We need to know, some of the academic applications and then some of the other activities at the
So
district.
your timeline of April to July 2024 really isn't a great deal of time to start getting this fiscal committee together to start exploring this $47 million.
We're trying to do a better job of mobilizing for summer of 2025.
Oh, okay.
And more important than that is lay the foundation for master planning for all of the buildings across the whole district. And it's it's a pretty big endeavor for,
So urgency means like now or in a year?
As fast as we
You know,
can.
Pardon me?
As fast as we can.
As fast as you can.
Yeah. And one thing that might throw the way these such spreadsheets get laid out, when we audit and when we prioritize in these numbers that you see, an example is a brick wall, and you've got many of them that are just shot. But if I look at a brick wall and a mortar joint is gone, I say it has no life left because it's beyond, it's, water is going in the building. So that puts it in this 1 to 3 list.
Okay.
If you don't do that, water will continue to go in and wreck other things, but if you understand what I'm saying.
So you are recommending to the board, we get this internal facilities committee like up and running as soon as possible.
We do.
Well, it is, isn't
It is, we're already.
Will you have the committee formed?
We do.
And that's the
Are
directors.
there community members on that committee?
No,
No,
that, see,
votes,
we're
yeah.
getting it, we're looking at options, in terms of for the board to consider to advance to the committee to engage them. So in a lot of this is a preventive maintenance. I mean, there's a lot to consider here, including, we talked about coming up to speed of addressing the deferred maintenance that hasn't been addressed. There's also probably a life expectancy of buildings in terms of what are you putting into it to maintain it for so long? What if you wanted to maintain it another 100 years? I mean, that's a whole different picture. And
I just think when we're talking this amount of money and this timeline and this extravagant and this spending and in your timeline, if we're going to keep it, the more we can get the community on board, involved in committee structure, and let them listen to what you people are saying and what the board is hearing at the same time.
That's
The more we can tie that relationship, the better off we're going to be. We just had a referendum, supported favorably. Now we're coming at them with more. This is going to be a drawing expense. This is going to be a borrowing expense. The more we can tie that community in with what we're trying to do and unite the board with the community, I think is very, very important.
our recommendation is to get that community involvement a year from now. And the reason is to clarify what we've already collected operationally. Because we really don't want to have questions from the community that we can't answer. Because there's going to be a lot of questions, I'm sure, as you go through this.
It's like options.
X, we don't know right now.
Yeah, so-
Oh, okay, so that's gonna take a year.
It's a bad answer to give.
So we want to work with that internal committee first, get the clarification, and then push it out to the community and hone it to what the community wants or.
But a significant manageable thing is still, what are we doing this summer? What are we doing next summer?
Right.
In terms of what's the top of the priority for, within that 1.5 million to 2 million that we talked about.
And that's a good point too. We don't want to lose those summers. We want to get something done.
Right. And I would identify another thing here that's into this thinking, by the very nature of what we're proposing. For example, we made Jefferson's one of our newest buildings, likely to be part of the permanent configuration of however the future might look. So we know that we'll get a return on that investment. We'd also be looking at other things in terms of if we did something here, could it be transferable or something of that nature? So a lot of thought going in terms of what types of options, how do you make sure you're going to get a return on that money as long as you can.
Yeah. I guess I think it won't hurt to start to work on stakeholder interest groups, et cetera. I think for it all to work, if we're going to get another referendum through, we're going to have a lot of success on what we do in those buildings right now, not just in reading scores, but in retention of faculty, in creating a harmony, in all the internal groups, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have to start looking like a school system that really is worth putting that money into. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that. I think that we have to start making the case, though, that, this is something that we really have to do as a community.
Angela, what's the max that we could borrow? Was it 15 to 20 million? Did I hear that right?
on short term would be in that range, correct?
Okay. What about, can we do longer term borrowing?
That would be the most that the board could do without a referendum.
Okay.
You know, you're limited to 20 years, you know, and around that amount, you know, there are certain amounts that you'd have to stay within for the 138 the board approved.
So unless there's like a giant pot of money that you're sitting on that I don't know about, that sounds to me like that's probably the only realistic option for the next year, right?
Want to look closer at that as an option.
And you figure it out by how much you can make a payment on? Is that what you just said before?
Yeah, and I'll have Mike Clark from Baird, he's gonna be meeting with, or up here next week, Thursday, meet with, some of the group that we're going to be, with just the internal advisory committee, and I can have him, sketch that out as well. I have some preliminary numbers, but he'll bring them up to date with the current interest rates as well. And then we can model that in and see with different scenarios where it'll take us from a tax standpoint and.
What do we have on the books this summer, guys?
Oh, we've seen that.
I mean, is it
Yeah.
how much of that, I mean, it can't be that much of that 47 billion.
It's about 1.5 to 2 million.
1.2 million in expenditure if we can get
Ways
contracts.
to go, yeah.
It's a slow start.
Only 45 million.
And we are pretty much specifically looking at Jefferson because it was a school that we felt we weren't gonna make bad decisions on with what's happened throughout the next couple of years. And it is a school that hasn't been maintained either. It's just definitely worth saving at this point.
We would like to be at the same place we are today this fall for 2025.
Right.
So we're essentially 6 months late in getting ready for projects for this summer. At least that's what we feel.
So the worst places are, what, Lincoln and Washington?
I would say Washington, Wilson, and Madison.
Oh, okay, all right.
Lincoln has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, I guess. This report, it's hard to say thank you. I'm not blaming you. I'm not gonna blame the
We
messenger.
talked about that too. I'm sorry that the message is negative. There's a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Many, many tons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I guess, I mean, we really have much money into that. Is that because we're a little bit?
It's choices.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on next to the central office restructuring.
Well, central office restructuring, as you know, I think it was last board meeting, you accepted Ms. McCall's resignation in terms of she has about 4 weeks left. So we've been regrouping in terms of transitioning. Ms. McCall's position was never meant to be long-term. I was hoping for another year. But I'm very fortunate, and I think on behalf of the executive team, administrators, directors, principals, and staff, we are in good position. A lot of work, but in terms of the roadmap that we've had down for the instructional side, I think it's really, really good. We have to really stay and work that, and it goes into what Carrie just identified, in terms of reestablishing our image and what we're doing and creating that success story. I do think we have to pay attention to, just as we mentioned now, facilities have not been addressed. The whole operational side is our support units supporting instruction, including facilities. And so, with that, I've restructured, not replacing the assistant superintendent position, but 2 executive directors is where I'm proceeding, and that would be Lee responsible for all operations, so all these support areas of business, technology, facilities would report with him. All the principals who are currently reporting to Jamie will report to Heidi. Those would be executive directors. Katie would remain, as the director of pupil services. She'll probably have a focus also on behavior in terms of doing that. And Mike Nault, who is kindly come also out of retirement, to assist. I try to get them 2 or 3 more years. It's a year by year thing and so forth. It's looking, but a lot to do still in a short period of time. And so now it's trying to get the other areas kind of lined up. And so that's what I have. There will be some savings. I've asked Mike to look at, in terms of fairness, in terms of what we're asking people to do and to come back to recommendations for any pay adjustments. And also, Mike Schwartz has done just an extremely great job in bringing him on board. And so we're just having to make sure that we're being fair with him in terms of the compensation versus what we used to pay in this area for fewer people and yet making some early progress. So that's where we're at. It's a kind of a transitional thing. It's not like you just hand off something or whatever. And so we're into the initial stages of that. So that's kind of where I'm proceeding.
Mike, were you ever retired?
You've saying that
It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like
It's a
it.
good thing. It's an honor.
It's a good thing, yes. That's the attitude.
Mike has got a lot of great recognition from everybody, and we're really pleased. And Mike Schwartz has also building principals, staff, seeing things that are getting done that for some reason we never could find a way to get some things done. And it's been really good, but we've got to get into the heavy lifting stuff too, and he can't do it alone. And that's why I think we've got a great team here with CISA 10. Everybody's feeling really good about the interactions we've had so far. I think he'll work really good with the board as we start bringing updates to get to that time where we have to really engage the community, in terms of really then getting a lot more people involved in terms of, okay, what are we going to do? What are our options? What are we going to do?
Or is this, correct me on, is this a motion or is this a done deal or is this go to the board? How does this restructuring plan work?
I'm proceeding, with my staff in terms of reassigning some responsibilities as I've indicated, in terms of I anticipate that there will be recommended some.
And that really goes against our district policy because according to the district policy, your realignment of the board and the duties of the staff need to go to the board by district policy 1100. The responsibility shall flow through the district administrator, through the administrative staff to the operation personnel. The board shall oversee the district administrator's determination that effectively skilled and operational staff make these assignments. So according to this policy, that can't be your decision. It needs to come to the board.
I will submit that next meeting.
Okay. Because there are some areas, I think Lee and Heidi are tremendous people. Lee's tremendously gifted in his abilities and talents, but he's not versed in Skyward. He's not versed in overseeing a Department of Business and Finance. He's great in curriculum instruction and leadership, but I've known Lee for, I'm not even going to tell how many years, but he's very good, but not to oversee this department. Heidi was hired as an elementary principal with extreme knowledge in reading. Not to my knowledge has she really ever experienced supervising secondary education. There's a difference between elementary and secondary education. One shoe does not fit all. Her expertise, in my opinion, is still at the elementary and working. She's got a lot of work to do. We have a reading program. She's got to work with the state. We're going to hear how this is all going to tie together to get SFA working in our elementary program. I think breaking apart the utilization of their strengths and assigning, which used to be Jamie's job, is a big mistake. And at this point in time, you're going to really have to convince me that this is a good play on people's role, because I see it's Jamie's job now dispersed when I really think it's your job to oversee your department chair people. Your directors, I believe it's your job.
Over.
Yeah. At this point in time, I'd just like to highlight, I want to say thank you, Jamie, for everything you've done for the last time that you've been here. And you've been an amazing participant in every single level that we've gotten accomplished. And the amount of stress that you've gone through, I'm just very, very happy to even get to know you at all. And I'm so proud of your efforts, Jamie. And I'd just like to say thank you for everything you've done. And I wish that, that you would have stayed a little longer. However, I understand family is the most important thing. And thank you for everything you've done, Jamie.
I second that too. Thank you.
Okay, we'll return to this next meeting for discussion, possible action.
Okay.
And so,
Can I add something real?
oh, sure.
Yeah, Keith, I hear what you're saying, and I'd be curious to take a closer look at that policy, but, you know, from my perspective, as a member of the board, you know, we hire the superintendent and we set the policies of the district. I don't know if it's our jobs to get in the weeds on personnel decisions. That's just my take on it.
I mean, I think we should, all of us, take a look at the policy and make sure that we're at least well versed on it. We have our own opinions. For when it does come to it, we'll bring it up next meeting, as you said, and then we can present our opinions at that point in time. But yeah, absolutely, I think it's something we definitely need to dig into, what you brought up.
All right. Thank you, everybody. All right. Moving on to Director Schroeder's Act 20 update, also known as the ever-moving target.
That's fair.
Yeah, I know. I seem to find a new update article every other day.
Okay, I'm not going to display anything because you all have, I just want to give you some quick updates to keep you in the loop on the progress that we're making with Act 20. And then things that I find out as I learned those things through CISA or from the DPI directly. So starting with just with curriculum, where we're at with that, we are bringing together a team of our SFA facilitators, elementary principals, and reading teachers are going to meet with me next week. We've got a big chunk of time set aside, and we're going to use the DPI crosswalk tool, which is what they use to analyze curriculum. And we're going to look through that for ourselves and analyze our curriculum and see what we can find as far as areas where we might have some holes that need to be filled. My conversations with Stacy O'Polly from CISA 7, you know, there are not really very many curriculum that are going to meet every single aspect of what they're looking for. It is uncommon for things to be perfect. So we will find some holes and we will then have a plan to fill those holes. And so we will share that information with you when we have that work done. I don't think that one meeting is going to get that work done, but it certainly is going to get us headed in the right direction. The screener, the newest information is that the screener will be identified and shared out by July this summer. Once we know what that screener is, right now we're using FastBridge K-12. They are looking, I have heard unofficially that they might be looking at the same vendor that produces FastBridge. So it's possible that it will be FastBridge. That's what we're hoping for. We will have to decide if they come out with something different, if we're going to make a change as a K-12, which it's been really wonderful this year to have K-12 data. So I would be disappointed to go back to having two different assessment tools for our students. So we'll take a look at that once we hear what it is. The implementation that I'm going to be recommending is if we're able to get it purchased and have it online and up and running in the fall, for us to do it like maybe in October, which is about when we would have, even though we wouldn't have to start it till January, so that we can work out the kinks in October, since the expectation is to start it after January 1st. The individual reading plans is something that feels overwhelming, and maybe you've heard people talk about that. The DPI is releasing a model for that also on July 1st. So they're basically saying, here's a format we recommend, you can tweak it a little bit, but here's the basics. So we have not been working on our own, and I'm glad about that, because now they're going to give us one to use. That will be something that will follow. That those individual reading plans, once we have that screener in place and students, we look at who fell below and below the 25th percentile on that screener, and those are the students that will be required to have an individual reading plan. And so that will start after January 1st. So we give that screener in January, and then after that, we would be expected to jump right into all of those students having an individual reading plan created and interventions that are meeting that science of reading expectation. So we will, after it comes out on July 1st, create the MPSD version of that with a goal of having that ready to roll out in late fall so teachers can tiptoe into it. So it's not so overwhelming that all of a sudden, you know, in January, we're going to be doing something we haven't done before. So yeah, the individual reading plans, professional development. So that's going to be complicated. We are going to have to professionally develop all of our K-3 instructors of reading. So that it does include classroom teachers, special education teachers, and EL teachers that teach reading to students, and our K-3 principals. And we're a little ahead of the game there. All but one of our elementary principals are currently enrolled in a course that will meet these expectations. I'm going to be spending some time researching the option of, you know, analyzing the cost difference between having in-house people trained, so maybe a couple of our own people that would need to go off and be trained in one of these accepted courses, or if it's better to use CISA, or to even go through an online course. So I'll be looking at all of that and bring that to you once we kind of know what those costs will be. I have some emails out to what it would cost to train some trainers, and I just don't have that information back yet. So that training for staff, though, doesn't have to be started until July of 2025. So we have to say, by July of 2025, these people are enrolled and this is our plan. So we have quite a bit of time to get that fleshed out.
Our full implementation is 2025. We have to be up and ready to go starting September 2025.
Actually, January is when we have to start the individual reading plans,
Okay.
ironically, before we've had all the training. But that is the timeline that they've
So that's going
given
to be
us.
tough.
The reading the reading teachers will be prepared to do interventions. I feel good about that. Our classroom teachers have had quite a bit of PD, but people won't have all their PD by January. But that isn't the expectation, so that's good. So board policy is an important thing to talk about too. So we will need a policy from you that outlines the process for promoting students from 3rd grade to 4th grade. There was some talk originally when Act 20 was first coming out and being talked about there being a need to retain students, and that is not language that's being used anymore. But we do have to have a plan for students that get to the end of 3rd grade and are still not reading at the proficient level. What will we as a school district say? This is what we will provide for students, and this is what we'll be expecting. The DPI is also going to do a model policy for us in July of this summer that we can use as our beginning point. And that policy is not due to be in place until the following summer, July 2025. So we've got time.
2025.
Yep. I do think a thing that I haven't done a good enough job of yet, but we'll start working towards is really doing a better job of communicating about Act 20 to our stakeholders. So over the summer, we want to create a web, something on our web, a web page on our site that we're using that really just says, here's Act 20, here's what's going on at MPSD for Act 20. So get that up and running this summer. We'll start adding just some regular updates to the principal's news. We've been doing a little bit of that, but I feel like now once we start to have these meetings and things start to move, there will be more to update people about. And then also share out information with principals that they can put into their school newsletters, put some things on Facebook, whatever ways that we can just start to communicate. I think as parents we don't want parents to have questions. We hope we can answer them before they exist. So just those are maybe some changes. And then I just have a what's ahead slide that you can look at your leisure, and then I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you.
I have some.
Okay. May or may not have answered.
I know, and don't be afraid to say you don't know because they haven't decided.
Yep.
So the two big ones that jump out at me are what does this 25% below mean? Is that the bottom 25% by district, by state, or on a nationalized norm? Because when they say state nine.
So it's the 25th percentile on the screener. So the screener that we're all gonna have to use in the state of Wisconsin. So on that same screener, whatever of our students hit that 25th percentile and below.
But that's across the state,
Yes.
25% across the
No,
state.
yeah, in comparison to, is that
It's
what
a
you're
DPI
asking?
screener?
It's like PALS, does everyone remember PALS? It's the same sort of thing, where it's going to be, when we were compared with PALS, we were compared to all the other students in Wisconsin with PALS.
Right, okay, all right. And the other question I have, I know they haven't been super clear about it yet, the individualized reading plans, do we know if that's going to be more towards the RTI kind of idea? Or is it going to be more towards the IEP kind of idea? Because IEPs normally, individualized educational plans, normally are planned out for an entire year, where an RTI format is normally aimed at about 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks of instruction, where you're constantly reassessing to see how effective you're being. Have they said anything about what that window of time for these individualized reading plans will be?
I think there are going to be some things that we get to decide at the district level. I think it would be it's much more like RTI for sure.
Okay.
One of the things that will be interesting is that they will be expecting weekly progress monitoring, which will be interesting.
That's very much like RTI.
And so, yeah, I would anticipate that we would be having a student that is in this 25th percentile or below. The team gets together and talks about what are the deficits. We are going to have to use an assessment. In addition to this, that screener just says who, and then we find out what the what is from a diagnostic reading assessment. We will then give those children to say, these are the holes that they have, who can do that intervention, and what intervention would it be? And so then we'll try that for 6 to 12 weeks, doing some progress monitoring. Is that working? And then,
okay, thank you.
And isn't the reading plan though in place for 1 year? So it's an annual review, very similar to an IEP. So with the parent, it's an annual review.
yes, I think the idea being that if a student is doing well along the way, that they don't stay in obviously for the year, but that we want to, and there's a lot of expectations around parent communication and parent even involvement in that meeting. Very RTI-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask a simple question. You just said conflict this way, a lot of the same systems. Am I completely off base or?
I feel like there's a lot of things that we're doing with SFA that will maybe ease this or inform it, in the sense of, we do a lot of assessments in SFA we are going to be able to use that assessment information to know more about the kid at the meeting. And we are doing a lot of intervention meetings about our students in the area of reading. So yes, there's a lot that we're already doing that will ease this process.
Thank you. Next up, we have the director's report, where our directors are available to answer any questions you may have after looking over the report. Anybody?
This is to Mr. Tennis. Just all the directors, and I will never ask a question to a director that I haven't already called them and told them I'm going to ask this question, because I don't believe in I gotcha. So this is not an I gotcha. So I will always tell a director that I'm going to ask them a question, because I believe they have the opportunity to look and research and answer, to give us a good answer. So this is to Mr. Tennis. In your report, you run an administrative training program, correct? As I read in your report?
We have a team that.
How many people out of your program have we hired in the district as administrators? Not dean of students, because they're not, but how many have we hired locally to fulfill our vacancies out of that program?
So the program is in its infancy. It's its first year, but the answer is 0.
Okay.
Thanks for your answer.
Yes.
We'll get there. On that a little bit for you.
Yeah.
Remember, that program just started last school year. And we really didn't have any administrative vacancies Well, we had some, you know, we had 2 principalships in the AP. But those principalships, usually we're looking for somebody with a lot more experience watching those. So therefore, our interns are growing, they're learning. They just weren't ready for those types of positions.
Are these interns all licensed already by state DPI? They're not, they're going through their program?
They're sort of, so it can be a number of things. It can be exploratory. So if I'm someone who may be interested in school leadership, I could join this just to get some experience, some knowledge base, some opportunities perhaps in the district to help out with some different things. Or it could be someone who's decided, hey, I'm going to join a program, and while I'm concurrently going through that program, I want to take advantage of some opportunities that there are in the district to learn more about the role within the district.
Let's say we hired 2. We hired 2 that signed up for the program and attended 1 meeting, and we hired them before moving on. They're
As
all
deans or as, pardon me?
APs.
APs.
Yep. But our meeting with them was last May to get it started, but the talent that they already had presented themselves as a pretty good candidate for an AP.
So they're not licensed people going through this program?
Not to say, yes, there are some. Right now, I would say, based on what I know in our conversations through our activities, there's at least 2 or 3 that are licensed.
Okay.
But some looking to get into programs and other things.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, moving on to unfinished business, because I know this is when everybody's waiting. McKinley. Director Tennis.
Thanks again. And last time I visited with you, the board had asked me to take care of a couple of things. One being plan to ensure that systems are being created and followed so we don't have mistakes or negligence on our part in monitoring the new program. So there are several documents that you have under this agenda item. The first is called McKinley Academy Systems. If you look at that document, these are some things that have to be addressed on a regular basis. Some of them are just something that needs to be constructed, put into place. But walking down this, you'll see that the task on the left-hand column, when it will be addressed or dealt with, and then who's responsible for it. So this document can become part of the working, really the calendar of events that happen each year when we get ready to do staffing, for example, for the next school year, where we look at enrollment numbers and make sure that we have the appropriate number of staff to meet the needs of our students. You'll see on here there is plans for budgeting, working with the board, the McKinley board, recruiting and enrollment, attendance data systems, and student achievement data, including having yearly goals where we will monitor the progress quarterly, similar to what we do with all of our other schools, where we check up on the progress of their goals based on their current performance. We're currently just wrapping up our third quarter meetings, SFA meetings with our buildings, who are reporting out their data, going through their solution teams reports, letting us know how they're doing on their goals. So we'll do the similar thing also with McKinley. And I'll just take these really one document at a time. Does anyone have questions about the systems document?
Just a statement. I just want to say thank you for obviously doing this. And then understandably, I understand that you haven't been in this position for many years. So I understand this is not your previous mistakes at all. I'm just happy to have a director that I feel confident and believe to be confident at their job to do this correctly and to ensure the safety of the McKinley charter. So thank you very much.
Well, if there's no further questions on that one, the second one was in regards to funding. Thanks to Principal Boncher and her team for helping me look out to see what was out there for funds. You'll see on this one, McKinley Academy grant funded opportunities. What you'll see are a number of grants that are out there right now. you'll see that MPSD is eligible for all of them, with the exception of the specific DPI grant that is available for charters. However, the caveat is those charters either need to be expanding or starting up new. So currently, we aren't eligible for any of those dollars from the state in regards to the charter at this time. So this is just to point out that the grants available under the charter would also be available to the district. Are there any questions on that one? This was something that probably should have been developed a while ago. It is a checklist for the charter document itself. If you've read charters before, you'll know that they're pretty meaty. So what we've done here is we've pulled out all of things you could possibly consider to be a task or responsibility or an expectation by either the district or the McKinley board. And we've laid that out here so that you can see it. What I would say is, in a quick assessment of that checklist, there are items under our district and McKinley charter that are not happening. Okay, so I met with the board president from McKinley this week with Principal Boncher to talk about all of this. And basically, as we went through these, right, it was a surprise to her, really, in some cases, that there were things that were missed. And I know that in previous conversations about this topic, I know, Kerry had mentioned he served on that board. And I think if you want me to sum it up, this board has really been acting as a supportive board and not a governing board. And so, it's sort of a liken to with a charter is like they're really their own district, right? They're making their own decisions. But things like posting meetings and noticing for meetings wasn't an occurrence. So there are just some things, right? So I wanted you to have this. I can go through some specific examples if you'd like me to, but I mean, here's a good example and a practical one. A couple of years ago, as Lincoln High School was working towards becoming standards-based grading learning community, we were working with Mr. Durkis at McKinley on some of those practices, policies, procedures, best practices to work with teachers. At that time, Lindsay, the board president, told me that their board voted to go to standards-based grading, but they didn't ever do it. So, I mean, there's just some things like that I think are important to mention when we're talking about really who should have the ownership here as we move forward with McKinley Academy. So if anybody has any questions about the checklist, I'd be happy to take that. But I think this was also helpful in aiding that systems document that we just talked about, because we have to have things in place for this. And Lindsay and I also talked about, well, in the interim, what do we do? And we'll focus on several things that they have to do based on these responsibilities, but also things that the district needs them to do to set McKinley up for success in the fall.
Is basically these charter checklists?
Yeah.
This reads like the initial charter school that was developed when I was still at Lincoln, and the Charter Academy at McKinley was just developed. Kerry was a board member of that academy, but this reads pretty much the same expectations as it was back when it was originally developed.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of change in what I'm just reading here. And in your recruitment phase, Wilson and Washington developed a checklist with McKinley Academy that would identify a group of students who would best be served by an alternative high school. And then they nominated kids with their parents and the support, brought that group to McKinley Academy as they're functioning, and help them in the at-risk programs.
Yep.
So that recruitment phase is gone?
Well, it hasn't been taking place, but we're bringing it back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we think it's very important as we develop this new program to give our 8th grade students the information they need and have those school counselors and administrators and teachers at the middle school level, helping, potentially even recommending some students who may be a good fit.
Because they could
for that
always work
program.
back into Lincoln if
Correct.
they wanted to.
Absolutely.
Many of them chose not to because they were so successful, and that McKinley Academy was so vital to their importance, and their structures, mom and dad were happy, everybody was happy, because the kids were having a great deal of success in alternative education.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Fitt? Keith, thank you for that statement. Very important information. I'm more concerned at the moment about the financial impacts that we didn't catch. And then obviously the hours of operation of the students even getting the hours to make the requirements. So, but you do bring up a great point, because this was in place before and it happened, went to the wayside after. So obviously it's the people that it's the people we have in place to do their job at the appropriate level, which wasn't being done at the time. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you have to understand the kind of long-term context of McKinley, that it's been a stepchild of the system that's been poorly served through basically benign neglect. And that I don't think this McKinley thing has ever come up before this board until recently. And I think that there has to be kind of some synergy between the board and the administration at McKinley and this school board, because the school board, the board at McKinley has nothing to say about budgets, essentially. Very little authority that, really can compel an administrator to do anything. And I think that there's been this succession of administrators there that have kind of been thrown into McKinley and asked to simply learn how to swim. So I do think that before there's any kind of, hard judgment call on this, I think that, number one, this school system has to start to take that program more seriously than it ever has before. And I think that things have to be caught up, and then expectations have to be articulated, I think. But I think that, it's a lot like our buildings. They have not been repaired. They have not been even noticed. And I think that McKinley is an idea with a lot of potential, and I think it's served some students really well. I don't think it's received much attention or support from the mothership.
I want to make this point very clear. So I think this is a great example to see that money doesn't fix problems, people fix problems. So there was plenty of money going to McKinley Academy, and it wasn't being used most effectively. So the comparison about the facilities, it's about the personnel that we have doing their job, and we're holding them accountable to do their job. That's my opinion.
Well, I think the thing that there's a lot of money going to McKinley is something I want to disabuse you of, I think.
Okay, well, I was very happy with Jamie's obviously past endeavors of what she was able to research about McKinley Academy and some of the expenses that we had in the previous years.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
the virtual program, yeah.
Oh, like $800,000, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I know, that was something that
Slipped through the
honestly
cracks.
was created coming out of the pandemic, and then didn't work out quite as anticipated. So it's not been, it's only lasted a couple of years, I think, right?
I understand. I'm just saying, we got to have the right people in place. It comes down to people.
So, Lee,
Yeah.
is there any advantage to being a charter school?
Not really. So I did include, to transition to that document, a memorandum to Jim, just with a recommendation citing some specific rationale around why my recommendation, and we've had collaborative conversations with this. It's not like this is just me here. We've talked with staff members. I attended a staff meeting at McKinley this week to answer questions about programming related things, and we did talk about this, but there's some redundancy and duplication in what we're doing. there's supposed to be two governing boards, ours, that is the mothership, as was indicated. But those responsibilities, as you saw on that checklist, are really relegated to one page. And they're very oversight type things. And then there's very much the operations and decisions that have to be made to run McKinley as a charter, as it was intended to by the document, which is really a governing board. The board hasn't been operating as a governing board. And so if we are to choose to continue the charter, it will mean a heavy investment of our time and effort to get that board able and ready to do their job. Now, it doesn't mean that those individuals can't still positively contribute in a supportive role as they always have. Because, one of the things we talked about with the board president and Principal Boncher was, you may not need a governing board, but these people who have given their time and their passion to help these kids and the staff of that school may be able to serve on a school improvement team or a supportive type of role, or a site-based management team. There are those models out there that were quite popular in the 90s and sort of faded away. But, to really give them the opportunity to do what I think they have been doing, which is supporting. Governing will take a lot of work based on where we are right now. The second thing is just with the simple non-compliance on both the part of the MPSD and the charter in regards to the document itself. And then, their curriculum is really needs to be more well-defined, and we need to make sure that their curriculum is matched up with high school standards. And that's a lot of work. We've got that, we know the standards well. We have courses in place that we can, use, that are all board approved, that we can, use in our new vision of McKinley. But in its current form, it's really not in place.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
I am just wondering if we've looked outside of our fish tank to see if there are successful gardens in the valley or in Sheboygan or Green Bay.
Oh, there are.
And if they're successful, are they able to do things that we can't do within regular education, within regular school? And I'm just saying that this is a big decision to terminate. I just want to make sure we're not losing an opportunity and that we talk to people. The problems we're having are Manitowoc problems. But are we checking with successful charter schools to say, can they do this in the public school, in the regular school, or just charter?
We sent several staff members to John Cody up in Green Bay. We've also, Principal Boncher had a DPI charter specialist come and talk to their board and provided them with the information, which we've used in this also. Their presentation coupled with their supporting documents is also something that we looked through to ensure that this was the right recommendation.
And that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Matt was first. It's kind of a problem when you find a problem, you have to figure out the solution before you present the problem. So obviously, so you made your recommendation with all of your research. Do you have a solution that we can integrate programming within? Obviously you do. So
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Well, and it'll be with working with their board, because if you remember, no matter what option we have or we choose to do, we will be under the charter this coming school year. And so I told the president of their board and Principal Boncher that we're committed to supporting whatever we need to do to make sure that things are ready to go for those kids. And we'll be there to help support them to make sure that those things happen, including, these things on the systems document, which have to take place in order to get a school year going. So we'll make sure that it all happens.
And that's still going to be on the agenda for July. Is that the hard contract date?
So what we were hoping is that you would just get this information today, and then if you had further questions that I needed to either research or get information for you, I could do that, and that we could have you perhaps take action in May, which would still give us a good month. The last document that I have in there is a draft document of what the legal document would look like to inform them. if we did decide to terminate the charter. That has already been taken care of. If you do make that decision, it's written and ready to go. If not, we will work with the board president and Principal Boncher to ensure that we do the best we can to support their efforts in running their charter.
Could we have, on Biff's point, could we have a little more detail about the exploration of other options of successful charters before the July meeting?
So the charters themselves, charters are pretty like they're charters. They have a document similar to ours that govern them. So they're their own, we have like, they're their own entity. So what's really hard here is there's a lot of successful charters that are running programming that may look similar to what we're going to run, but it may look very different depending on what their charter exists for. So there are charters that are strictly project-based charters. There are charters that are STEM-based. There are arts charters. Ours is specific to some programming that our visioning team had recently done. It's really all boils down to the governance. That's really what this boils down to. And right now, we don't have the capacity or the systems in place yet to govern it as a separate thing, in my opinion. Could we? Yes. It will require a lot of time and effort. Now, the alternative of that is if the charter board doesn't exist, then McKinley simply falls in to existing systems of governance that this board already has in place and our administrative team already has in place for all of our other schools, where we're monitoring their progress on their goals that they're setting for academics. We're making sure that their attendance policies are in place and that they're running those procedures. So a lot of those little things will get done through our systems of government, as opposed to ones right now that aren't really existing.
The responsibility still falls on you, obviously, either way. So that's why the redundancy, I can see why it's not good to have the extra level of just governance that's making it more problematic to divide your efforts.
To me, it just also takes the pressure off those. I mean, these people who are volunteering to do this for us on that charter board, they're passionate and they've given a lot of their time. And to no fault of their own, they haven't had a set.
Well, they passed the correct verbiage on the checklist, but that doesn't mean it's implemented. It falls back on you to make sure the audits are done.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying ultimately you're going to be responsible.
Absolutely.
So I completely understand your point of view and I accept it and I support it actually.
So the question in front of this board is, do we keep McKinley as a charter? Or do we resolve the charter after a year and bring it into Manitowoc Public School District?
Absolutely.
So I get my next question. McKinley was developed as an alternative high school, an at-risk alternative high school for kids who needed an alternative education. And it was successful. For many, many years, that charter school was successful. It saved many kids throughout this district that got a very good education at an alternative level that helped them become successful. And we watched them graduate, we watched them go on to work. We had a work-study program. We saw where business and industries would come in and pick up these seniors and juniors and put them in jobs. So it was a highly successful, and it did all of these things that on this checklist. So I agree with Matt when he said it seems to be now that we've lost the focus of what that original school was all about, and when we developed the charter. Well, we've had the charter for many years. We've lost that focus, and somehow it's lost its complexity and definition.
Which is why we did the visioning throughout the course of this winter and spring. That involved many stakeholders from.
So what's the vision now for that?
So that is, we have that, and I presented at the last meeting, which of course you weren't here for, but I have Principal Boncher here. You can come up and talk about the.
No, I don't mean, it's not complicated, but is it to stay in at-risk? Is it to stay?
An alternative.
Yeah.
One of the things here that we have to understand, we agree that we need this alternative high school, as we're discussing it right now. It's just, do we need two boards to govern it?
Right.
Because we're going to do the heavy lifting. regardless.
Well, all that board really is if we, which we had in the past, we had a representative to that board, from this board.
Right.
And they came and they just gave monthly updates to assure that communication took
It comes
place.
down to what's the value added. When I'm guessing, because of, experiencing it myself, when that charter was formed, we probably had an awful lot of money that came in and funded us for
I
3
couldn't tell
years.
you that.
I mean, that's,
I don't think we had a lot.
well, I mean, there is a lot of
I just-
charter schools.
There was a big chunk of change.
Launch.
I don't know the amount,
Yeah.
but it was all the startup costs.
Tony, you're getting the question answered. Are you good?
Yeah, okay. I think the financial incentives obviously have ran their course, and I think the programming that gets presented or was presented, I think can still supplement that stuff, but I think the charter has ran its course at this point, and now the financial advantage is not there. Obviously, we just were shown the grant stuff, so unless we were going to expand that charter, which could be an option if it was presented to us.
You could still find some financial advantage from a standpoint of open enrollment, that is not something, or something that could still happen. And I just wanted to add a little bit of clarity, because I think in some of the information that was shared with the board may have not shed light on some of the full picture that I want to make sure everyone understands. When we log enrollment as a district, we take 2 counts each year, September and January, okay? And so between your January count and your September count, there was a dramatic drop for McKinley. So we can't always anticipate that. So that's not necessarily, financial oversight, if you will. You have to think about, we have to look at the enrollments as a team, as a district, and look at that. So looking ahead to this next model, we would be able to, look at that. So we have the model in there for that. So, that's just something that we will monitor as a district, looking as we come into that stuff. So, we probably lost about 40 to 50 students in 1 year and then more. So, and Carrie was exactly right. I'm glad he mentioned that. When we came out of the pandemic, the goal was to use ESSER funding as a part of that in order to get that virtual. So this is not a long-standing situation where we've been, but we've needed to reevaluate it. So I just wanted to add that context.
But, with that, you're not saying that they could open enroll their to PSD for enrollment, for schools of choice.
They can open enroll into McKinley for
And can they enroll here too if we have an alternative school?
They did in the
Correct,
past.
yes,
They did.
yes.
So it just, I'm
Yes,
just
you're
wanting
right.
not to confuse the board with so again, we believe very strongly in alternative as we're discussing it.
Just who's going to be the.
Yeah, you're not
Exactly.
creating any new students, you're just moving them back and forth. So they would still be staying in the district if the programming was
We feel
correct.
very strongly about the staff and what their contributions have been and are working with it.
But we have 1 year left on that charter.
Yep,
Contract.
no matter what, yep. And frankly, the charter expires in 26.
Right.
So, yeah.
And they're also reflected in the report card.
It's like you pop up. Okay. Yeah. Everybody good?
We're good.
All right. Thank you. Next. Proposed 4.12 consumer price index increase for all non-teaching staff and stipend positions.
Yes, let me refresh your memories a little bit.
Yes.
WERC, Wisconsin Employment Relations Commission, determined that cost of living was 4.12% consumer price index for school districts across the state of Wisconsin effective July 1st. And so CISA 5 puts out a survey every year. They put out a survey again this year. We had about 120 school districts participate. And the vast majority of those school districts were 4.0% or higher. And if you recall correctly, going across, so if they had the teacher column, the administrator column, or support staff column, the vast majority was 99 out of 120, whatever, the same number, the 4.1% was the same number across the board. So my recommendation is that For the non-teaching staff and all stipend positions effective July 1, that we approve a 4.12% CPI index increase for all administrators, all support staff. Basically, we termed it as non-teaching staff and stipend positions.
I'll make an emotion to approve that.
So we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second? Any discussion?
I will not be supporting that. We don't know yet what we're doing with our teaching staff. And I think there is discussion that needs to take place on salary increases for some administration staff. So I will not support this. I think this should be tabled personally and go to the personnel committee when that's formed. So the motion, I can't make a motion.
Yeah, you can absolutely move to table.
I will move to table both of these. And hopefully send them to a personnel committee.
Well, officially only one
I
of
can
them
only
has
do
been moved, so you can only move to table the
Okay.
one that's on
I
the
will
side.
move to table the one on the floor.
Okay. I will second that motion for more than just want of allowing the discussion on it. So we have a motion to table. Did you want to speak any further to it? I think you sort of
As I
did
said, I
already.
think we need to look closer at salary increases for some administration staff. I also think we have to find out in our closed session where we are with our teaching staff. I don't see a purpose in making this go and the other one not tonight, so I'd like to find out what happens in that closed session.
What some administration, I was just kind of wondering, like, do you have like a directive as to where we're going with that, or are we individually picking people out we don't like? What are we talking about?
I would like to reward people based on evaluation of their goals and where we are in the district with certain positions. So if you want to do it in open, we can. I would like to table it and do it in a closed session.
I have no problem doing anything open, but that's just me. I was just kind of wondering as to where you were going with that, because we've always been, and 99% of the districts across the state just went straight across the board. I, in the past, had been opposed to that, but everybody's like, nope, this is the way it's normally done, and I can understand that.
That's what we did.
I would like to say, thank you, Mike, obviously for your work, and then all the staff, the non-teaching staff and the stipend positions. You guys have been working your butt off. Thank you. And I think that this is well in par, and I want to make it, done tonight, but obviously there's contradictions. And, but I'm in full support of doing the 4.1 consumer price index increase for the non-teaching staff and stipend positions.
I'd just like to clarify, Mike, that increase is consistent with the rest of the state, right? So we would be pretty much in line with what other districts are doing, right?
Correct.
So there wouldn't really be a logical reason not to do it, would there?
We already voted on that twice. We did.
Right, I'm just kind of hashing through that again for the public that maybe missed that.
Okay.
Current item up for discussion is the tabling of this until next time. So that's what we're discussing.
Okay, I would not like to
Not the
table.
proposal, just so that we're clear.
Okay.
You guys.
So my motion gets null and void after it's asked to be tabled?
If it's tabled, then yes, yours.
I know, but my motion was made. I'm just asking,
Yes,
because you're a
right,
smart
right.
one.
It moves to the next time for reconsideration, right?
If the
Your
table
motion
is
then gets-
supported.
Okay, so you have to vote on the table first?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I just want to be clear
Yep,
that
thank
we're
you.
on the table.
Yep.
Everybody good on that?
Correct.
Okay, so if there's any other discussion on the tabling,
Not on the table. I mean, as far as tabling, I would not support tabling it just because I'd like to see this get taken care of. We've already had up and down discussions regarding this, and I think this is something that just needs to be taken care of. So I will not support tabling.
all right. So I'm going to call the question myself here. Not normal to do that, but I'm going to do it for the tabling. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
Can we see the ayes, please?
We can vote on it after we come out of the session.
That's a good point.
Okay, next we have the,
But it's tabled.
Well, we can bring it off the table.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have the proposed 4.12 increase for the superintendent.
I would like to move to table that one also.
Okay. We have a motion to table. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
We have a second.
Seconded?
Keith.
Thank you.
Going to guess that there really isn't a need to discuss, but I'm not trying to prohibit it. I just want to be clear about that. Okay, all those in favor of the table say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Nay.
The ayes again, please, just make sure. Okay. All right. Thank you. Then we will move on to new business. The textbook adoption.
These reading.
Yeah, we can start with American government politics. I used to teach that.
Is there going to be a quiz?
Oh, I always gave quizzes.
Every day.
Every day. I gave reading quizzes every day. So you have before you, just a reminder that we have a adoption cycle. Social studies is up. We're working through some elementary and middle school things. The high school looked at all of their courses. So before you tonight, you'll have several different documents as well as textbooks. And I'll just sort of summarize what we have tonight. We're just asking you to move these through to the public review. Of course, according to our policy, there's a 30-day review of these where we make them available. So the first course that you have is the Advanced Modern U.S. History. The attached document gives the course description, rationale, standards, talks about the criteria, and the decision, the recommendation, and what other books were reviewed. The group came back with U.S. History Interactive, Reconstruction to Present, which is a publisher is Savas, for the modern U.S. history course. I don't know if you want to take these as a lot or individually, but
I'm certainly hoping we're going to get a motion for them.
yeah. All right, I'll go through the rest of them then. The second one we have is an AP psychology book. I will tell you that I believe the AP psychology book that we're replacing is the one that they had when I started teaching at Lincoln in 2001. So this is definitely a long time coming. Myers, which is one of the standard bearer for this particular course, was the recommendation from our psychology PLC at the high school. Next, we have, there's a package of world history, U.S. history, and civics. This is an online platform, so I don't have a textbook in front of us, called Discovery Education. The district already subscribes to this as a resource. So it's really though wanting to use that curriculum specifically for the courses of world history, U.S. history, and civics is the recommendation for those three courses. And then the final adoption that has been given to us by that department is to update their AP U.S. Government and Politics book, American Politics and Government Today, which was written by Cannon, who I think he's actually a Madison guy. They are looking, this is just the new edition. I believe they already had this textbook. This is the new edition of the textbook, I believe. Motion we move all three to public review.
Motion to move them all to public review.
Second.
And the second, Mr. Shaw. Thank you, gentlemen. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those will now be available for anyone to peruse. Right here.
Are these books actually good books or are they all online?
These will, the text will actually get texts.
Wow.
At least class sets, and then for the AP ones, likely for each kid, because they got to do a lot of reading.
Good form.
Yes. Thank you. We'll be back with these probably the second meeting of May if our days work out right. We got to get 30 days, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next up, we have a proposal for 2 elementary reading teachers for the 24-25 school year.
Heidi, are you going to talk to them?
It says you on here. It says you right here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just worried.
It's a team. Shoot all
When we, when I was working with teachers, we've had a couple of meetings this last few months, just working on Act 20 things. We took our current Fastbridge data from the winter 2 window, and we analyzed that. And if we were to have to start Act 20 today, we would have 367 students that need individual reading plans in K3. So, our current reading teacher staff that would not work out in the sense of being able to meet those expectations. By getting a little bit hopefully ahead of the game and getting a couple more of our reading teachers secured, we will come closer to being able to do that. And when you look at these numbers, I just want you to be thinking about that's only our K3 students. We also have students in grades 4 and 5 that need intervention that may be in the middle of a special education referral. With the volume of students that we need to intervene with right now, it is sometimes you're having to make some tough choices. But with Act 20, the expectation is all of those students will have an individual reading plan and have intervention. So this gives us an opportunity if we could post those positions now that we might have some people to hire. I think other districts will start doing this too. So we were hoping to get a little bit ahead of the game.
You're just asking for 2, right?
Correct.
It's still 33 students.
It is.
That's a lot.
It is. When we think about intervention, typically you have a good average number is 3 students in an intervention with you. Sometimes it does have to become a smaller number than that, but we weren't shooting for the sky. We were trying to be reasonable.
The other thing that we have to be cognizant of is that for these reading positions, we need a 360, so certification 360 or 317 for the master's degree reading specialist. And if we don't get out in front of it now, all those people have jobs. We will not, have a very, very difficult time if we wait until late summer or later. Very difficult. So this is our best opportunity to see if we can secure one or 2,
Second. Got a motion to approve. We have a second. Don't run away. I want to know. Are they going to be traveling around buildings? No, I don't mean it that way. From building to building? Are you just going to hire people or super fast typers that you're going to put in a closet somewhere that everybody else sends their stuff
No, we
to?
have one school that is in significant need based on the students that they have. And I'll just say Riverview has TK. And so our kindergarten, transition kindergarten students, that's 24 students right there. So that was new this year. And so that's just added a big need at that school. And then we have 2 other schools that have on paper right now would be schools where we would place that second person, maybe like 75-25. That could change, but that's where what our numbers show us right now.
And how many licensed reading teachers do we have right now?
9 in the elementaries.
9.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
9 FTEs, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Hearing none. There you go. Thank you. Okay, then we have next the first read of policy revisions. You don't have to do that. For the first read, now are these the ones we looked at last month?
Yeah.
No, these are the newly introduced.
They were introduced
These
at
are
the
the
last
newly
meeting.
introduced ones.
Yep.
So then we move on from them to suggested policy revisions. These are the ones that were introduced last time.
No,
These weren't either?
no.
These are
The
just,
first read
policy revisions, those were introduced at the April 9th meeting.
Always get those two confused.
Yep.
Okay,
So we need to,
go through those.
go through those. In the past, we've been going through each one by one if anyone had any suggestions.
Okay, all right, so here's what I'm gonna do. First read policy revisions. If there's anything you would like to amend on any one of these policies, I'm gonna go through them policy by policy. You want to amend something, you may ask for that at this time. Okay?
Mr. President, do we not have a policy committee to do this?
Hold on. On the next page,
I'm just kidding. Go ahead, sorry.
I would be thrilled for someone to move to refer this to the policy committee, which would perforce make us put one together. So, well, that's why I said I'm happy to go through them one at a time, unless somebody has a motion about all of them.
And you move them to a committee that doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
That was my concern. Otherwise, I would do that. Have the committee go through it.
I don't think you can, but we might be able to go backwards.
Well, we could table these until.
Yeah, you can
have a
table them.
committee.
I moved to table.
Yeah.
Okay, all of them.
Yes.
Okay, motion to table all of them?
I'll second.
We have a second?
Okay. If you made the motion?
Yes.
I did, yes.
Okay, Carrie
Mr.
seconded.
Trask seconded?
To table the first read, these policies here.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those are tabled. Allows us to turn the page. On to chapter 8, other business.
Chris?
And the first thing on the, yes,
I'm sorry. So the ones that are being introduced, those are just not being addressed at this time, like,
exactly.
okay. They're not, okay, thank you.
Hey, Chris, can I mention something before we get into the other business?
Sure.
Just, it's a throwback to our last meeting. I just wanted to take the opportunity, if nobody else was going to, there was some things that we kind of went through quickly. And I think it deserves mention to bring it back up. And I'm sure you guys have heard this already as well too, but we had some donations on our last consent agenda that we just kind of approved and went right through, but I thought it would be worth mentioning and giving an extra thanks to some of these people that did donate money in large amounts, like Peter's Pantry, and Pentair for Mantrock Ice and things like that. There's some things out there that I believe that maybe we just don't know. And I kind of got some information that, like with Peter's Pantry, they graciously reached out to the district and donated a large amount of money, currently $5,500, which is what it was last month, to help meet the standards, meet the needs of our students and families, and they're continuing to donate money each month, $250 per school each month. And those funds can be used by our schools to expand access to weekend food backpacks, stock food for snack pantries, or emergency needs for families, like those families experiencing homelessness and things like that. And this whole, agenda of having a community connections partnership is something that's really important to bring to the forefront and talk about in front of people. So I want to make sure that I brought that up. We just kind of went over it really quick last time, and I wanted to bring that up and just make mention of it, and we can, continue on with business. Thank you for giving me that.
Oh, sure. Thank you for bringing that up. You're right. Sometimes we don't get to everything because of the amount of stuff there is.
Yeah, quickly,
Okay, well, now we have, under other business, A is committees of the MPSD School Board. I did ask for this to be put on, so I will start off. It's not a surprise to anybody who's heard me comment over the last year that I would like to see us go back to committees. Personally, what I see is 4 what I would call standing committees that you would anticipate meeting monthly or fairly close to monthly when they have things to do. And those would be personnel would be one, finance and buildings and grounds would be another. I think those two, you're not gonna do anything on buildings and grounds that you can't do finance, or at least you might as well put those two together. Curriculum instruction, and then finally policy. So it is my hope that everybody's friendly to putting those together. The reason I like 4 standing ones is because it makes the math simple. Because with 4 committees with 3 members, and the president is ad hoc on each of them, each member of the board gets 2 committees. So the math works out very nicely for everybody. Nobody gets stuck with a lot more committees. People don't feel bad because they get too many. People don't feel lucky because they only got 1. Oh, personnel. Second is finance and buildings and ground. Third is curriculum instruction. And last is policy. Now,
Your proposal is to combine finance and buildings and grounds?
yeah, because you can't really do anything with buildings and grounds unless you've got the money.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just makes it, keeps it before. And officially, by our bylaws, I can just do that. Personally, I think it's more respectful to have the discussion so that you guys know what I'm thinking about, so you have an idea where we're headed. And if you say, whoa, committees will never work, then, this is a chance to talk about that too.
What was the third one, Chris? Personnel, finance, buildings and grounds.
Next is curriculum instruction, and the last is policy.
I'm not sure finance and buildings and grounds, because of how much is there, might work together. What might work together is policy and personnel, because there's less and less personnel things to do since Act 10. And I think we need to go over and look at some of our policies. So I'm just wondering if that would be a better fit. The other thing is, I think we should have an ethics committee when needed to discuss issues that come up. To have a formal committee. Now, that may be the executive committee, and maybe that's just part of that committee, but I think there is a need for a committee to look at things that happen in the district. It wouldn't have to be something that meets every month. It could just meet on need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that finance is a heavy lift, but with this, buildings and grounds, it's sort of in the back, isn't it? So I think that what we really will be talking about is the buildings and grounds stuff that is scheduled and needs to be done. Is how we're gonna finance that, I suppose. So I don't see that as too burdensome. Although I do think, personnel policy could work too, but I really think the ethics committee is a good idea.
If you kept building and grounds and finance together, and then you put policy and personnel together, and then you added an ethics committee, you'd have the same amount.
Each of the 4.
Just saying.
Say that one more time.
He was talking about the numbers working out good with 4 committees, and he had also, and then Biff threw in a 5th one. So, but he had mentioned that policy and personnel would work together well. He had mentioned concern about building and grounds and finance, but I'm kind of with Carrie on that. It's really, I think it would probably be okay to put those 2 together. And then if he added that other one, ethics, it would basically be the same amount if you had ethics committee, personnel and policy, building and grounds and finance, whatever the heck the first one was that he talked about.
What size committee are you looking at? What size committee then?
Well, he said 3 people apiece.
Okay.
Personnel.
I don't want to rehash it all, but the only problem is with the ethics committee, it's not going to come up all the time.
Yeah, right.
So that might be problematic to only have essentially 3 committees
Yeah,
then.
right.
But I do like bringing the personnel and policy together and still the finance and buildings grounds together. I just, the ethics, I don't think that's a full-time gig.
It isn't, but it would still be an
easier way to distribute.
You're right.
The membership.
And it's something that, I don't know, honestly, what would, Biff, explain what would be the purpose?
I was just going to say, there are many times at city government, county government level where committees don't meet during the month because there's nothing there. So it's not something that, it's not like you have to meet. You have a scheduled meeting every month, but you don't have to meet if there's not an agenda that's, very short. Question was.
Well, you had brought it up, so I mean, give me an idea of what that ethics committee.
It would deal with, the complaints that,
Is it more of a closed session type meeting?
Probably, yeah. Because there'd be decisions made and and sometimes those kind of things don't need to be in the public until.
I understand.
Correct. So.
Yeah, then my expectation would be the first three: personnel and policy, finance and building and grounds, curriculum instruction. The chairs of those would report out each month at the regular meeting. I don't think you'd expect ethics to be reporting out regularly.
No, but I mean, if you needed a fourth to split up.
Right, yeah, and I do like that though, so that everybody gets. So that's the way I'll approach that. I encourage you to just send me an email with maybe your top 3 picks so that I can choose 2 of those 3.
I'll make a motion to that. That we move as a board to, I like the policy and personnel. In the past, they've always joined because we're not always going to have policies, but we would be sitting here going through one in a board meeting. It can still be tied into that personnel committee. Makes sense.
Right.
It's not. Buildings and finance, let's try it. If it doesn't work, we can always separate them. I mean, there's nothing to say that that's cast in cement if it doesn't work, but let's try it. See if the committees work together. I think it's a foundation of conversation and workmanship. I like the curriculum and ethics. So you've got your 4 committees. So I make a motion that we adopt that procedure.
But we support the president's.
Yeah, because I don't.
To go to committee, because it's,
Correct.
right now, I'll second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
Discussion? I think it's completely in your purview to make that decision, so I don't think it needs a motion in a second, so
Yeah.
that's my opinion.
I think it's a show of support, so.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, I guess, have a different opinion on this. I'm not crazy about more meetings, not just because of the meetings, but I would like to remind everyone here on the board, we had these committees years back, and for a long time, it wasn't getting the job done. So, not that I'm anti-meeting, but I would be open to exploring other types of committee structures. I know we went down that path in the past, and we never really shifted off that committee of the whole. But I would like to remind everyone that all the gains we saw last year with the reading and everything came without committee meetings. So I don't think that you have to have more meetings to accomplish things. And I would just encourage people to keep that perspective.
And the only thing that I would say in that is that I don't know in the past if they had, especially the standing committees, reporting out at every meeting, because I think it would have stood out that curriculum instruction had not met for 4 or 5 years when every month they were reporting out that they didn't meet. So I think some of these things can get missed by not having that built-in reporting out. Because that is what happened with curriculum instruction.
And help me understand that. So what got missed exactly?
Curriculum instruction simply did not meet for literally years.
I was on that committee 2 years ago.
I'm not sure that's true.
Way back.
Oh, well, that might explain why we weren't updating things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well before you. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about you guys.
That was well before me too.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, by having a built-in reporting out mechanism, I think would help fight some of the stuff that got missed.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and again, it's just philosophically, I think a different approach could be, let's define outcomes and let's not get in the weeds and micromanage everything, because I don't think that's the goal of the board either. I think really what we should be focusing on is setting clear district-wide objectives that we want to accomplish, and then holding Jim accountable to making that happen. And if we need additional meetings, I would say let's just have another committee of the whole. Let's have a 3rd meeting each month if we need to. That would be my idea. Obviously that's probably not going to get a lot of support with this group, but I'm just not a fan of micromanagement if he can avoid it.
I'd like to speak in favor, not of micromanagement. I don't think that the committee structure is aimed at that. But I do think that since we haven't had committees, God, we just haven't been engaged in some of these areas. I mean, we've focused so much on the reading program and, you know, and getting that up. I mean, I think there's been a tremendous amount of neglect that's gone on because board people are not engaged in some of these areas or almost any of these areas. And second of all, we didn't get a whole lot of good information back as to what was happening on such things as instruction, et cetera, on all sorts of things like buildings and grounds. We did delegate that out to the CISA people, but then at a meeting we had a baseball park proposal that came up, and I mean these things really require some careful information gathering, some preliminary discussion, and then intelligent recommendations made to the board that then can be discussed, you know, in a spirited fashion when they come up. But I think certainly committee of the whole didn't work at all, it seemed to me. And we were getting information, partially information, you know, at the time the meetings were held, instead of people on the board knowing what the hell was going on. I mean, there was lots of stuff that we didn't know what was going on.
All that was going on before too. So that, I mean, that's.
No, that was not all going on before. I mean, I think that
2 years ago it was going on.
Well, I don't know. When I chaired a couple committees, the boards, you know, the committee took the assignment seriously, gathered information, you know, discussed it in an intelligent way with 3 people engaged, and then making an intelligent recommendation to the board for discussion. But we didn't have any of that in the last year.
So I'll kind of speak to Carrie's comments as well right now. So 2 years ago, Carrie did a great job of chairing the Buildings and Grounds Department. However, I believe we didn't really have very many meetings, and it wasn't in his negativity. He didn't do anything wrong. I believe the director wasn't facilitating that in the correct manner. So now that we have the audit done completely, I believe that, hey, so that takes time though, and we had to pay an outside company, CISA, to complete that. I think more meetings on finance and buildings and grounds would be great. However, you know, if we only have a committee of 3, then informing the other board members will be a little bit challenging. However, we'll move that way forward. It's just, you got to have the right people in place to do the job correctly. Everything was in good spirit back when we had committees, but it doesn't matter if the committees are there if the personnel aren't doing their job correctly. So.
Oh, well.
Question. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I mean, I know this isn't entirely the same, but I'm on our student senate at school, right? And we have committees. So, I mean, most of you have met with us. When we meet monthly with you guys, right? We wouldn't be able to do that without committees. There's, I think, 6 of us on our committee. There's 33 kids on Senate, so can you imagine being in those meetings? We brought this up at our last one. Can you imagine being in those meetings with us, with those 30-some kids trying to like say anything? And what we do is we have a scheduled report for each committee at the beginning of our full Senate meetings. And I explain what happens at these meetings, and I explain what happens in our individual meetings when you guys come to Lincoln. And they don't have to sit through all the, not unimportant, but things that don't pertain to them. They hear the facts, they hear the important things. So they're aware, and they don't have to sit through like 5-hour-long meetings. And I think it works well for us. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little different. I know it's a lot higher level, but just to give some input on that.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I know you asked to call a question. So I'm going to call it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Abstaining.
I'm going to do nay. So we have 2 nays and an abstention. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to establishing a CISA 7 representative for the MPSD.
So, you know, the CISA is made up of your constituent districts, and we had a seat there, and so we would be recommending that somebody would volunteer to be, or you to appoint somebody to do that.
Okay, and do we have a volunteer to join CISA 7? I believe it was.
That was Stacy.
Stacy, okay.
Stacy volunteered to do that.
What are meetings?
You know,
Do they have a specific meeting time or do they call them when they make it?
They have, they don't meet real often.
We'll contact you though.
Yeah, I have to let them know tomorrow.
I'd be willing to do it.
I was going to say, if nobody's volunteered, I'll do it, and we'll find out how onerous it is.
Green Bay?
No, it's in Green Bay.
It's just some good biking up there. So I'd be-
You're going to ride your bike up to Green Bay?
No, I'll go to
That's
the meeting
what I
and then
heard.
I'll bike at the reforestation.
Everybody here heard that. Put their hands up. Okay, thank you, sir.
No problem.
All right, and establish a representative and an alternative representative for the January 2025 WASB Delegate Assembly. I don't even know where
I
that's
did
being
that. I
held. Do you
did
know where
that.
it's being held?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
January
gonna be
in
held
Milwaukee.
in Milwaukee.
It's in Milwaukee. It's always in Milwaukee? Okay, I didn't know if it moved.
I did that for years. I'll go. They're fun. I like them.
Yeah.
And you're volunteering?
Well, I was the rep.
Well, if Carrie wants to, I don't care. I mean,
But we need a delegate and alternate.
I'll be his alternate in case Carrie can't make it.
All right, you can come in.
You can both, yeah.
Yeah, we can both go.
We can get him.
Any of the
He can
board
get there
is
no matter what.
can go to the
Right, yeah.
convention.
That's just, the delegate just goes to the delegate assembly and has the vote for the district.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no vacation.
In case there's no football you want to watch. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
that's true. It's in January.
thank you both for doing that. Next, we have remarks from the board president. I do have a few. You should not anticipate this as being a regular occurrence, but I do have a few. I really thank the board for this opportunity. A few things that, as I do them, I hope you see that they're guided by a very simple goal of public governance and its goal, which is for us to reason together. Okay? We've had some suggestions for change to the public input policy. I've got some thoughts which I'm happy to share when the group meets to look those things over. However, I do want to say flat out, one of the things that I will absolutely, as president, be sticking to is the intent of public input. Public input was never meant to be an open or public forum. It is meant for the public to have the opportunity, especially the public overseen by the environs that compose this school district, to come and talk to the board about matters germane to the authority and power of the board. So, public input that steps outside of our responsibilities and powers will be asked to redirect themselves to things that this board has authority and control over. This is not to stifle people's opinion, their ability to express themselves. It is, however, to make sure that public input to the board is relevant to what the board can do. Okay? I will also be working very hard to make sure that with the committee structure, we have one regular meeting a month. And if we call a special meeting, it will be narrowly focused on a special thing. It is my view that a special meeting with an agenda that is 90% identical to a regular meeting is probably not a special meeting.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if someone chose to pursue you on it in court, although the remedy is ridiculous, I think that they would prevail. Okay, so we'll be working really hard on that. I'm always going to endeavor to keep discussion moving. You are all very amenable this evening, and I appreciate that. I will try very hard to make sure that anybody gets a first turn to say something before somebody gets a second turn, unless there's an addressing back and forth of ideas, points. Okay, so sometimes if you've already spoken and you signal to speak again, and I don't take you in the order that you asked, it may be that's I'm trying to get everybody a first bite at the apple before we go to a second. So, but if I miss you completely, straighten me out, because that can happen too, okay? If it appears that we're not ready to act after some discussion, I'll just flat out stop us and ask, what more information do you need so we can get it to look at it next time? There's nothing wrong with not acting if we don't have enough information to act, okay? To the public, I know that process can take time and can sometimes be painful, but you know, it's not the job of government to be nimble. It's the job of government to be transparent and deliberate. So it may be less efficient. That's just sometimes the way things work out. Okay? I won't do a lot of these president remarks. I know it's ironic on the bottom of page 2 of my remarks, I'm telling you I won't do a lot of president remarks. But the last thing I want to say is I do think it's important to use time in each meeting to address corrections and clarifications, and that I think are important, not necessarily to the board, who I think probably knows them, but to the public. I will tell you, visiting a school 2 weeks ago, it was heartbreaking to me to talk to 4 different members of the staff, all of whom reported speaking with other members of the public in the MPSD attendance area, and having to explain to them that no, we do not have kitty litter, we do not have litter boxes in our schools. So they well, thank you, you're clapping for something that I thought was pretty obvious, but I was expressly asked to make sure I clarified that for the record. And I do think it's important to let people know, no, we don't have anything like that. And certainly, if we did, we would be trying to get that fixed and straightened out. If anybody was to come forward and report that, my first action would be to get in touch with them about what school they're talking about and see how we can get that straightened out. Okay? Now, a quote dubiously attributed to Mark Twain goes, "A lie can get halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its pants." And that's really why it's so important that when we can straighten things out, we let people know what the reality is. More recently, there were concerns about, for want of a better way for me to phrase it, election interference. I even received emails from people that were concerned about this. Fortunately, before I even got to pursue it, Board Member Hanson followed up on it, and I'll surrender the end of this time just so that you can know what he discovered about it.
I will make this quick. I called the city of Manitowoc clerk who runs elections in the city. And there were comments made about District 1 and things going on there that shouldn't have been going on about the election. And the election workers who volunteer were reading the ballot the way that it was presented. Sometimes when we hear things read, we hear it a different way. But the accusation was they were being told they had to vote for 2 people. They were reading, "You can vote for 2." That was the wording on the ballot. They heard it differently than how it was being read, which then caused a disturbance there by 2 gentlemen at the polling place for the 1st district. I then called Jess, the county clerk, because the other concern was at Newton. And she had heard that. She had assured me that somebody had contacted one of the parties in the state of Wisconsin. They called down right away and were checking it out. That political party was satisfied with the explanation. The same thing happened. The person read it, what was on the ballot, to the voter. You can vote for 2. Not you have to, you can. She, of course, wasn't working that day at Newton, so I called the head of the Newton elections, and she debunked the story that we heard about the gentleman getting disciplined 3 times and then refused to leave. So we have to make sure that when we get information, that we follow up on it. And we don't do our students any good or our parents any good if they think there's kitty litter in bathrooms, if the election was not fair. So we have to be the standard bearer, and I appreciate some of the things they're going to try to do to make sure that give us criticism about a program that's on the agenda if you don't like it. But let's stick to facts and let's do it that way. But that was from the 4 election people that ran the election, and I have no reason not to doubt them. They're all wonderful employees and wonderful people who work for the county and the city.
Thank you. My only final, yes, sir.
I would just like to say that I too talked to the clerk in Newton and I heard otherwise. So I heard that they had to move a gentleman who was not following the protocols. So we'll check with her tomorrow then. I'm not disputing the outcome of the election. I'm just saying.
No, I know.
I'm going to be factually correct. Let's.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I would say is to youth groups out there, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, anybody who's really interested, a small group of kids that want to come at the regular board meeting and lead us in the pledge, we'd be delighted to see you here at the beginning of the meeting. I just want to throw that in. Okay. That's good. And finally, future meeting, May 14th, 2024. After that, we are going into closed session.
Quick question, are you going to appoint committees, or are you going to ask us to tell you what committees we'd like to serve on?
I ask everybody to send me their top 3 picks with a real hope of putting you into it.
And since I had already sent in mine now.
I get first. Thank you. You get dibs. You got dibs, sir. Okay.
There's only 3 minutes, right?
Right here is what you guys use?
Yeah.
I'm using the whole.
Yes.
You're gonna do ethics committee? That was the 4. There was 4. Okay, so.
Never beats, right?
Yeah, we got a motion to convene into closed session first, yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the motion, then I'm gonna announce the, yeah, okay. Okay, so the Board of Education will vote to convene in closed session for the purpose of considering the following matter. Considering the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This meeting is authorized pursuant to section 19.851C of the Wisconsin statutes, A, teacher compensation. Do I have a motion to go into close?
Motion.
Second. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. This is the second?
Fifth.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Okay, roll call vote, I'll let you call.
Christopher Evo.
Aye.
Dick Hansen.
Aye.
Matthew Phipps.
Aye.
Keith Shaw.
Aye.
Matthew Spalding.
Aye.
Gary Trask.
Aye.
Reed Westell.
Okay, we are in close.